like, I know that the mob became successful and really blew up during Prohibition. What I didn't realize was the mob really pushed the, hey, we don't deal with drugs. We don't deal with anybody that does deal with drugs. We're against drugs. And then you started showing that that's just Hollywood.
El Chapo, it was Pablo Escobar, El Chapo, but they don't see like a guy like Lucky Luciano as the predecessor to all this. And really he was, he was like the first, big heroin kingpin, and nobody kind of views it as this in history because of all the Hollywood movies and stuff. So, like people think this is recent, all this, racism and the drug war and stuff like this. It's not, and it even came out, like they say Nixon was going after the blacks and the hippies. I mean, it doesn't start in 1970. It goes all the way back to the 20s. So why do we have some of these substances like, alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, even sugar? I mean, they're all basically, like substances that, can alter you in some way, and it's just like, oh, well, these ones are okay, and we're going to regulate them and make money on them. But, these ones are not okay, because, the Italians, the blacks, the Mexicans, so it's the whole system is so racist, on its face, like, oh, white people control these ones, so it's all good. You could make the analogy that the drug war and law enforcement, propped up, these rich people so they can make money and kill all of us and pollute the world. So it's like the dark side of capitalism.
Hey, this is Matt Cox, and I'm here with Seth Ferranti. He is the writer, director of a new documentary that just came out called Dope Man, and we're going to be doing an interview and talking about the doc. Check it out. I was going to throw in there the White Boy Rick, but I didn't know if you wanted, I mean.
Yeah, I don't care. I mean, that's my biggest credit, the White Boy doc. I mean, it's still on Netflix right now.
Right. Yeah, I saw it. I don't know. I probably saw it like a month or so ago. I was flipping through, I'll flip through docs when I'm doing stuff. I watch, I'll watch documentaries and stuff. I flipped it through and I saw it and I was like, hey. So, but I also saw that you came out. So you came out with this, with Dope Man. And what's the other doc? Don't you have another one that just came out? Because you had another one, LSD or something, right?
Yeah, we've been screening that, so that's not going to probably be out till September. But we've been doing screening at events, like we did Bicycle Day. We screened it at the big MAPS psychedelic conference in Denver, and I just screened it in Grass Valley last weekend at a big psychedelic art gallery called the Chambers Project.
Okay, because I remember you sent me. I think you sent me the link to the trailer, maybe.
Yeah. So really, I got a bunch of things. The Dope Man is not actually out yet. It's in the aggregator's hands. So, nowadays it's even hard to get a release date, because the aggregator gets them, they just kind of put it in the line at Amazon and iTunes, and then it'll go on like what they call TVOD first, a transactional video on demand, where you like rent it or buy it from Amazon and iTunes. And then that's about a 60-day window. And then 60 days after it comes out on that, then it'll be what they call the AVOD, the advertising video on demand, like, Tubi, Roku, stuff like that. And the whole time, we don't have a streaming deal yet, but, a lot of times as an independent, if you're not like in-house Netflix production or whatever, you actually, you have to put it out and they want to see how it goes. And then if it goes good, then the streamers will come in and license it.
Okay. I was going to say it, well, it's over an hour, right? And it wasn't, is it?
Yeah, about 75 minutes, yeah.
Okay. Because it starts off at the very, like I told you beforehand that my wife and I watched it the other night. You sent me the link, so I was able to watch it. But I noticed that, initially I was watching it and I was like, well, I kind of know this. But then I realized that that it really just follows from the very, the beginnings of drugs all the way through. Because when I was watching it, I was thinking, I wonder why he did this, because I feel like I was thinking like, I feel like I know some of this information, but I never really saw, I never really followed, you followed the evolution of from every single point throughout what hundreds of a couple hundred
Yeah,
years.
like no, it's basically like 100 years. So, when prohibition was still going on in this country in the 20s, the mobsters, that's basically how the mobsters came up, because before
Yeah.
prohibition, the mobsters were just like street corner thugs, extorting businesses in their neighborhoods and taking hits, beating people up, whatever. So as soon as prohibition came and they started smuggling alcohol, that's when they started making real money, like money they had never seen before. That's when, these big criminal organizations, kind of came online, because once you have the money, then you could get the politicians, then you could get, the more businesses, and it just really expanded, what they were doing, and made them, almost into like these big corporation type structures. So, a lot of these guys were smart, and it's funny too, because I think a lot of people know there were Jewish gangsters, there were Irish gangsters, there were Italian gangsters, but at first they all kind of worked together, and then it became, as stuff went on, and like when Lucky Luciano took over the Italian mafia, and formed the commission and all this, famous historical stuff that we know, he made it only Italian, and the Jewish guys kind of went into finance, and the Irish guys, started going into government and police. So, I mean, I'm not privy to the conversations like these guys like Arnold Rothstein, Jack Lake Simon, Lucky Luciano had. But, to me, it seems, that like they kind of planned all this. They say, okay, Irish, you guys take the police politics. Jewish, you guys do the finance, banks. We're going to keep the organized crime. And, they formed these foundations and set in motion like all this stuff that made the mob, a powerhouse, probably up until like the 80s. The mob was like super powerful. So I'm just kind of trying to set the foundation and kind of show, how everything got to where it was, and at the same time, they were smart enough to know that prohibition wasn't going to last. So they started looking, what can we replace, and that's how they kind of formed, the first drug cartel.
Well, that was like when it got to that point in the documentary, it's like what happens is as I was watching, I was like, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't realize that. Like there's all these little things, and you kind of starts tying in together. And when you were talking about the mob, like obviously, like I know that the mob became successful and really blew up during Prohibition. Like I think most people know that. But then what I didn't realize was the drug angle, because you even mention it in the documentary. You talk about how like the mob really pushed hey, we don't deal with drugs. We don't deal with anybody that does deal with drugs. We're against drugs. And then you started showing that's just Hollywood. Like, listen, this guy, Lucky Luciano, this guy, all these different mobsters all had drug arrests for drugs. Like if you don't deal with drugs and you are, pushing any type of drug activity out of the mob and you won't deal with it, then how come every single mobster had a drug arrest? And then you start explaining it. And so that was a part that I was like, oh, wow. Like I really had bought into they don't want to deal with anybody that has to do with drugs, and they certainly wouldn't deal with that. Like I really had bought into that till I watched the documentary. And I was like, wow. And of course you show the arrest, like, hey, here's the arrest, here's the mugshot for the arrest, here's the. So I was like, oh wow, he looked into this. Like this looks really
good. I see it like they, it was almost like a deflection for them, because the guys at the top, it's not like they were handling shipments and stuff like that. They were just getting envelopes of money, but they knew where the money was coming. They were passing the orders, down the line. But it was really this kind of thing where, like the head people, like the spokesman or whatever, to the public, they would be like, we don't do this, because they were trying to protect their money, because obviously if you're making money in something illegal, I mean, our government does it all the time. Our government talks about, oh, we don't do this. We don't do this. That's like the front, but right. They're doing it all, because you want to hide it. If you got something lucrative and that society frowns on, so that's how this whole like man of honor, with the Godfather, kind of showed, and that's what I'm trying to show. I'm like, it's a myth. These guys, were in dope from day one. They were the first drug cartel. And if you look at history, people know that you can say, okay, like El Chapo, it was Pablo Escobar, El Chapo, but they don't see like a guy like Lucky Luciano as the predecessor to all this. And really he was. He was like the first, big heroin kingpin. And nobody kind of views it as this in history because of all the Hollywood movies and stuff. So, I just wanted to kind of, that's what I do. I like to expose stuff. Like with White Boy, we wanted to expose all the police corruption, and help get White Boy out. So I'm just trying to expose stuff and kind of try to set the record straight.
So I noticed, I didn't really notice this until the very end when I think you have it on the screen, where it says, it said like episode 1. Is this a series? Because I mean,
so
you wrapped it up.
I feel I'm gonna do well. I'm gonna go more in because this kind of for the mafia, this kind of covers from like the 20s to the 40s. A lot of the stuff at the end, I'm just like foreshadowing. Like what's to come. I'm connecting it, but at the same time, this is open ended. I can go. Because in like the 40s to kind of like the 60s, mid 60s, they had like the French connection, which everybody has probably heard of the French connection,
right?
The big mafia heroin connection, right? And then, from the 70s, that's when the pizza connection started. Like another, that a lot of people have heard of, they've made movies. So, I can kind of show the mafia story in Dope. I'm going to show it in 3 episodes. This, then the part 2, which will kind of go the 40s, the 60s, and then, the pizza connection, like the 70s, to the 80s. And there's just like, there's just like all these mobsters, even somebody like John Gotti, that were, they were getting money from this, and everybody denies it. So I'm going to kind of show that line, but also at the same time, I'm leaving it open. So, then in episode 4, then I can look at the Colombian cocaine cartels. I can look, at the African-American drug kingpins. I can look at the Mexican kingpins because it's just, this thing is like ongoing. It's been ongoing for 100 years. It's just, the names have changed. The locations have changed. The personalities or the ethnic groups have changed. But I mean, it's the same thing. And my biggest point in this whole thing is, people talk about like the drug war, Nixon started the drug war in 71 and then, Reagan, and Bush amped it up in the late 80s. But, this goes back, man. This guy, Harry Anslinger, he was a failed prohibition agent. He formed the Bureau of Narcotics and he started chasing all these people. They just had a big movie about Harry Anslinger, chasing Billie Holiday, the famous jazz singer,
right.
The drug addict. Like this dude, Harry Anslinger, he was like super racist against Italians, super racist against African Americans. And I'm just trying to show, like people think this is recent, all this, racism and the drug war and stuff like this. It's not, and it even came out, like they say Nixon was going after the blacks and the hippies. I mean, it doesn't start in 1970. It goes all the way back to the 20s. So I'm trying to show, this parallel, you got 100 years of the good guys and 100 years of the bad guys. And it's still going on today. So it's like, when is it going to stop? This is a war that, nobody's going to win. So, I did 21 years in federal prison for the drug war. So, I kind of see what it is. I shouldn't have done 21 years in federal prison for the crimes that I committed as a first-time nonviolent offender, selling cannabis and LSD. So, I'm just trying to show, let's get the right history out there. Let's show the real reasons, because everything that this dude, Harry Anslinger, this dude like came up in Pennsylvania with like kind of Quaker values. He worked at the big railroads, in the early 20th century, when they were the big corporations. So he got these corporate values. He got these, kind of religious Quaker values and he got like these, racist values and stuff like this. So all this stuff that happened, it was kind of like this dude's mindset. And we haven't evolved at all. Law enforcement hasn't evolved. The government hasn't evolved. Everybody is still like what this dude kind of set in motion. And this dude was he was the head of the Bureau of Narcotics, a predecessor to the DEA for like like 50 years. Like this dude was still around like until like almost like the 60s. I'm not even sure the exact date when he died, but this dude was around forever. And people don't put this on him. They put it on Nixon, they put it on Reagan, they put it on Bush. But this is the dude that formed the whole template for the war on drugs. And it's been like this 100-year thing, where law enforcement is going after, the so-called bad guys. And, obviously some of them are bad guys, but, when you bring racism and stuff into that, they're just targeting groups of people because of the color of their skin or, where they're from.
I was just thinking, I interviewed a sheriff the other day, and he said that 80 to 85% of the people that are in his jail are there for drugs. And he's like, in almost all of them, almost like 95% of them are users. So it's basically 80%, you locked up 80% of users or small-time drug dealers. And some of those are selling drugs. A lot of those guys are selling drugs, but they're really just selling drugs to support their habit. Like if the drugs were available, and inexpensive, then, you know what I mean? You wouldn't, there would be no reason for those jails to be filled up. Or if you had free, if you took a percentage of that money and you turned it into, like free rehabs, because it's a hell of a lot cheaper to run a rehab than it is a jail.
Yeah. So, yeah, but that's just, back in the 20s, this guy, Harry Anslinger, they kind of criminalized addiction, but the problem I got with it too is because they picked and choose, so why do we have some of these substances like, alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, even sugar? I mean, they're all basically, like substances that, can alter you in some way, and it's just like, oh, well, these ones are okay and we're going to regulate them and make money on them. But, these ones are not okay, because, the Italians, the blacks, the Mexicans, so it's the whole system is so racist, on its face, like, oh, white people control these ones, so it's all good, and like I say, I look at some, I mean, like, obviously, heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, drugs like that, those are bad drugs. I totally agree with that. And people, when they're addicted, they do all types of crazy stuff, to get those drugs, commit crimes. But you look at some stuff like cannabis, like THC, to me, alcohol is way worse, and you could even argue that like a caffeine or a nicotine, is on the same level, even sugar. I mean, because if you think about it, you got somebody who smokes weed, yeah, they're just chilling out or whatever. You got somebody just smoked a pack of cigarettes or just drink a bunch of coffee, they're like all jittery, driving around jittery and stuff like that. So it's kind of like, I've always questioned that, and, it has a lot to do, I'm biased, because of my case and stuff. And I was punished a long time, for marijuana and LSD, but I'm like, why were these substances legal and these made legal? And when it comes down to it, it's all about money. The same thing, like you said, like law enforcement, why are we locking up drug addicts? Why have we criminalized addiction? Why are we not helping these people? And why have we been doing it 100 years? We've been doing it 100 years because it's been profitable. It's allowed, people in law enforcement, to target different, colors and communities. And just on its face, I think it's morally wrong. So I'm trying to kind of show, by telling the story of like these infamous and notorious gangsters, I'm showing, I want to show all these underlying issues of, why are we here where we are today? Why do we start this, drug war again in the late 80s and lock up all people like me and just take decades of their lives, for nonviolent offenses? Because we can all agree violent people should be in prison. People, pedophiles, child molesters, stuff like that, they should be in prison, but just because you want to smoke a joint or even if you want to shoot heroin, if that's what you want to do, I mean, that's your choice, so, I'm not saying I would do it or I would condone it, but, I just look at it, man, from my own sentence, I had a lot of questions. And so this is kind of looking at the history, but I'm just showing it from the frame of mind, like through these infamous and notorious gangsters, because I know that's what people like. They want to, see what these guys are about and what they did. I'm just taking the story a little deeper because I think a lot of the stuff that's been done has been glamorized or romanticized, and just kind of showed the surface, and even like the government. I mean, why aren't these dudes like? Why is not Lucky Luciano considered like a heroin kingpin? It's just it's crazy to me, So I look at it. So I'm just trying to expose it. Yeah, I'm trying to expose the truth, the real truth, so people can see. And it's just layers. You know what I'm saying? You got what's on the surface, but it's just layers and layers and layers and layers of stuff. And then when you tie it all together, you can be like, okay, I can see it now. So that's what that's what I'm trying to do. But at the same time, the viewer has to make their own decision. I'm just putting the information out there. They can form their own opinion. They don't have to have my opinion.
So, okay, so you don't know when this will be really available. It'll be 6 months or?
No, it's going to be in the next month.
Oh, in the next
month. So when I give you the aggregator, it's going to be like on Amazon and iTunes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I get to the aggregator, so they tell me like 1 to 4 weeks. Because everything's like digital now. So I'm not like my studio and my name is not big enough where Amazon's going to give me like a set release date. They just like put me in a line with all the other stuff that has been submitted.
Right.
Through aggregators, which an aggregator is basically like a digital distributor, because everything is digital now, everything is streaming. The old model for films, where you make a film, you get an advance for North American rights, you maybe go to theaters and then they sell the rights. I mean, that model is pretty much dead. And that now everything, it's all kind of, online streaming, on demand. Most people are watching stuff now like on their laptop. So, and like I say, I've only been out of prison 8 years. So, I've been doing this film stuff, or try to get into it. So I'm learning as I go. My previous experience to this, was White Boy, which I did with Sean Reck and Transition Studios. And I learned a lot on that. But it's still it's like just this whole film industry is like it's like ever evolving. Like, how do you get this to the people? How are the people going to access this? How are they going to know about it? So it's like something you kind of got to learn as you go, because it's changing so much. Like in the film industry, they would have like distributors, sales agents, studios. But now they got these, businesses that now they're like studios, sales agents, and distributors. So it's weird how stuff is going. And as and like I say, I'm not Netflix. I'm just an independent, Outlaw Films. That's my studio. So we're kind of doing this, by grassroots work, word of mouth, to kind of get this out here and let people see. But the one thing I can say, I learned how to make a documentary from Sean Reck on White Boy. Sean Reck, before he did that, he had done 200 Crime Stopper shows for all the networks, and he had won 9 regional Emmys in Ohio, and he kind of mentored me all this. So, he stressed like the high production value, because I think you can see, something on Netflix, you can really differentiate in the production value between something on Netflix and something on YouTube. So what I'm trying to do with Dopeman and everything else I'm doing, I'm trying to keep my production value, as high as possible, obviously within the budget that I have. But I want my stuff to look, like Netflix, as opposed to YouTube. And I'm not knocking YouTube. I know people that make a lot of money off YouTube. I just want my stuff. I just want my stuff to look, a lot nicer, so I shoot with better cameras, we shoot different angles, we light, all the things, that they do in Hollywood.
Right. So you're hoping that, they do well, they get picked up by a larger streaming network, and then you end up producing more and more of this series, right? A limited series.
Yeah. And like I'm saying, this is just one of my things, because, I got the Dopeman, but I also got Nightlife is about to come out, which is a nice little film. real beautiful film about the problems in North St. Louis, with like drug addiction and violence. It's about a group of violence interrupters called Nightlife that walk around at night. And then I got my LSD series, which I got the first episode done, which we've been screening around. I also got a cannabis series, about the Emerald Triangle called Tangled Roots. So I got a bunch of stuff. I'm kind of trying to brand outlaw films. Is kind of, it's like true crime, but it's more like counterculture drugs, like that part of what they would call true crime, as opposed to just like murder mysteries and whatnot.
Right. How do you? I don't know if you want to get into this, but I mean, how do you like? You didn't walk out of prison with several $1 million and a budget to do all this. Like, how are you raising the money to go about producing these, the various documentaries?
Yeah. So when I first started, I first started working on White Boy probably like 2 years after I was in prison. So we're talking like maybe like 2017. And, I saw how Sean Reck was kind of doing stuff, but he had a big name. He won 9 Emmys. So it's kind of easier, people wanted to give him money, because he had a reputation. So me, I had a reputation as a writer, but I didn't have a reputation as a filmmaker. So at first I was struggling, like nobody wanted to give me any money. I had all these ideas, nobody would invest anything, and this was probably like, from 2017 until, the end of the pandemic. So, we're talking like, 3-4 years, like I'm basically like struggling, funding little projects by myself with money I got from my books in journalism. But then, something extremely fortunate happened, for my career. White Boy, it blew up on Netflix at the end of the pandemic. It was like top 10, not top 10 documentary, top 10 on the whole Netflix for like 2 weeks. It had like, I don't know the exact number because Netflix doesn't give out numbers, but I've heard people say, like it had like 20 million views in like the first couple months. It was on Netflix. And I wrote and produced that. So, it wasn't my studio. I didn't direct it, but I was mentored by the guy whose studio it was and the guy who directed it. He kind of took me under his wings and I worked with him hand on hand. And that whole thing was based on my writing. It was based on my work, all the stuff I wrote about White Boy Rick previously for like Vice News and all these other places about the injustice of his case. So that kind of put a spotlight on me, and that kind of brought some attention. And even some of the people that I had talked to about money before, they kind of came back to me, because for me, White Boy was awesome because, it's nice. Like when you can go, like, I can go like, and sometimes I'll be in a restaurant or a store or something and, I can mention White Boy or I can hear other people talking about it. And, people know that film. They might not necessarily know Seth Ferranti as a writer director, but they know that film. So then I can volunteer that information. Oh, well, I wrote and directed that, or I wrote and produced that, and then, you know what I'm saying? So then it's cool, man. When you, especially as a creator, a content creator, when people like recognize your stuff and you have something that a lot of people have seen. So, once I got to that level, then it was kind of easier, people would actually listen to me. They would actually check out. I kind of equate that to, like, when the New England Patriots win the Super Bowl, everybody knows Tom Brady's a man, but all those people on the team, like in free agency and stuff, they get the big contracts because they were part of that winning culture.
Right.
So people, once you prove that you're part of something, because our country, our country is obsessed with winning. Everybody loves a winner in this country. Everybody loves something that's popular. There could be something that's just as good somewhere, but nobody knows about it, so nobody cares. So once I was a part of that winning production, it just gave me a lot more value and a lot more credit to people that want to invest in this type of stuff. And that's how I did it. I went back, some of the guys came back to me, they had friends and but I'll say true, most of my investors are they come from the cannabis world, and I don't know the cannabis industry. I don't know how hot it is right now because it seems like everybody's trying to do it. But like 3-4 years ago, it seemed like the cannabis people, had more money, and luckily they threw some of it my way.
Okay. And I mean, once you get, somebody that, puts up the money, and then they, of course, they get their money back in a percentage or whatever it is. Do they typically come back again and say, hey, what else do you want to do?
Yeah, I've got several of my investors. They already told me, when I pay them back, that they want to invest in more stuff. They're just waiting. But I see, I'm kind of at the, basically, like when White Boy came out, I got about 3 years of funding for my studio. This is the third year, so I'm like at the end, and it's took longer to get some of this stuff out. It's been a struggle. I've learned I've kind of learned as I went along. I sometimes, in life as a employer, you make, bad decisions on who you hire. So, I've kind of gone through that, but I got a good crew right now. I don't have a lot of, I got 5 guys, like editors and shooters that work for me. So, like I say, between now and Christmas, I got 5 projects dropping. First is Dope Men in the Nightlife. And then, which Dope Men is a kind of open-ended limited series. Nightlife is a standalone doc. The LSD is a series, a limited series. The Tangled Roots is a limited series. And I got this other standalone doc called Tortured Mind, which is about, how people leave prison, like with PTSD, and now they're actually calling it post-incarceration syndrome. They're calling it PICS, a form of PTSD. So I got this other film called The Tortured Mind that kind of looks at that, and it looks like why aren't these people, being helped? Like, why, you go into prison with an addiction or maybe some kind of mental issues, and then, they're thrown through the meat grinder, witnessed violence or, whatever, victims of violence. And then these people come out and then they're stuck, man. Their mental illness is exacerbated. Their addictions are like running rampant. And the prison system just throws them back out on the street. I mean, like, what do you call it? They give you like a bus ticket and $200. Like it's crazy, So like people are coming out, and yeah, maybe they had some addiction or some mental issue before, but going through the prison, the PTSD, the post-incarceration syndrome, it just, it amplifies it. And so I in A Tortured Mind, I studied the case of this one guy who was a friend of mine named Ryan Leone. And I mean, he's dead now, bro. He's dead because he witnessed a lot of violence. He couldn't control his addiction. His mental illness got worse. And no one helped him, dude. They just threw him back out to the world. And, he was in federal prison. He was in state prison, and then he eventually, he overdosed, man. He died. So it kind of follows, his story as the prime example of, we need to change, man. We need to do something different. So I think that's what a lot of my work, I'm trying to entertain people and show people cool stuff and cool stories that I can get access to that a lot of other people can't. But at the same time, I want to show, like, everything I've done so far, even like my writing, like shows and stuff, I'm like saying, how can we make it better? What can we do? Like the White Boy, like, why did White Boy Rick have to do 32 years in prison for 8 kilos of cocaine? You know what I'm saying? So I just like to look at these different things, because if not, the mainstream media is just going to bury all this stuff under the rug, because, nobody cares unless you can present it to them, in an entertaining way. And then, you can, like when we deal with the White Boy story, we eventually helped get him out because there was so much public outrage after watching the doc that, people were basically demanding, like, why is this guy still in prison? So I'm trying to do that with all my films, and especially Dope Men. Like, why have we been fighting this 100-year war? Why has law enforcement, basically, been seizing stuff? Because law enforcement is crazy, because, I'm based in Missouri, in St. Charles County, and the police have this big monster truck, bro, that they like drive around when they do like rallies or parades or whatever. Why do the police have a monster truck?
They seized it from a drug dealer?
Or the money from forfeiture, they're using money. So, it just doesn't make sense to me that law enforcement, they have an incentive to bust drug dealers. It's called forfeiture, like you just said. So it's just like, why are we incentivizing law enforcement to go after drug dealers? It just doesn't make sense. And it's been going on so long.
Because
I'm just like,
sorry, I wrote a book called Generation Oxy. And at the end of the book, when the kid gets arrested, his name's Doug Dodd. He got arrested. He was sitting in the back of, he said, like, I forget, it was some kind of SUV. He goes, it was really a nice SUV. He goes, and he said, man, it's a nice SUV. And he goes, yeah, I pulled it off a drug dealer, last month. He goes, I'll be driving your car next week. And he was just like, he said, I was just like,
and then when you even look at like the DEA and stuff, there's been so many stories of like rogue DEA agents, so many stories of like women DEA agents going in, dating these drug dealers, having sex with them, even getting pregnant to bust them. I mean, this is crazy, bro. This is like high crap. I think this is worse than some dude selling crack on the street. But why is that okay? Right. Why is that okay? But selling crack on the street is not. So,
well, I was gonna say, I have another buddy that got busted in Hawaii. He got busted. Of course, they take all your stuff, and he went to jail. So he went to jail, and he had like a $30,000 Rolex. And he said, they took my stuff. He said, well, they already had, I think, an attorney on retainer. So he and his brother get arrested. They go to jail. He said, that day or the next day, he got bonded out. He said, and the bond was outrageous. It's like $1 million. He said, well, we had it. So he said, like, his parents or somebody actually was already ready to put up the bond. So he got bonded out. He said, when I went to go get my all my stuff, he said, my Rolex wasn't there. So he's like, no, where's my Rolex? He said, I had the receipt, showed the Rolex. He goes, so I start saying, hey, you guys owe me $30,000. So he starts arguing and bitching. I want to say it was DEA. They had to call 3 or 4 different people. And eventually, he said, like 2 hours later, the DEA agent one of the agents that busted him walked in the front door and threw the Rolex on the counter and said, here, bro, I wasn't stealing your Rolex. We were just using it, for some bling for another bust. He's like, you just pulled it out of my property, thinking I wasn't going to get bond. Because they were all telling him, you're never getting out. You're doing 20 years. And that's what they believed. And they believed, you're getting 20 years. We'll be selling this stuff. So he just removed it and drove home. They had to call the guy at home. He wasn't on a bus. He was at home. He had to get in his car and drive down there and give him his watch back. So, I mean, that's, like, there are so many stories like that. And what happens to that cop? Nothing.
No, it's like the same thing. So look, I'm a cannabis psychedelic dude. So, I believe, like when I was 13, like I believed in cannabis and I thought cannabis was, medical, spiritual, therapeutical, and the same with like psychedelics. I thought, that it was very spiritual. It was like mind expanding, made you see stuff the different way, so, but with the drug war and in my 25-year sentence, oh, I'm wrong. I'm a drug addict. I'm a criminal. I never consider myself a criminal though. I consider myself an outlaw because I broke laws that I thought were wrong. And now, lo and behold, 30 something years later, cannabis is legal, is on its way to, federal legality, eventually, but it is legal in a bunch of states. And now psychedelics are being looked at again for their therapeutic value. Because if you look at it, the same thing with this kind of 100-year thing with law enforcement, and drug dealers. So there's another thing too, which I touch on in Dopeman a little bit. All right. The pharmaceutical companies, they came online in the 20s, bro. All the pharmaceutical, there was no pharmaceutical stuff. Before, people smoked weed or weed treated like 60 different symptoms for thousands of years. Like the herbalist or whatever, the doctor or healer or whatever, that's what they would prescribe. Or even other psychedelics, like peyote, mescaline, stuff like that. Right. So when these big pharmaceutical companies came online as a direct result of like the industrials, because a lot of people made a lot of money, like all the big names, the Rockefellers, all those names, they like the industrial age, the robber barons, they made all this money. But then in the early 1900s, they got shot down because they were exploiting people. People were getting their arms chopped off and they weren't getting any type of compensation, child labor, long hours, and they were just using these people as human chattel. And when that got exposed, they already had all this money, but they had to look for something different to continue making their money because they couldn't make it. So they went into pharmaceuticals and they went into plastics, right? So the way I see it, and I kind of made this allusion in Dope Men, law enforcement basically was going after the competitors to these new pharmaceutical and plastic industries. And now look, 100 years later, we got fentanyl everywhere. People dying from fentanyl every day, right? Our oceans are full of plastic. So, you could make the analogy that the drug war and law enforcement, propped up, these rich people so they can make money and kill all of us and pollute the world. So it's like the dark side of capitalism, And like I say, I'm American. I like capitalism. This is probably one of the only countries where you can have nothing and you can come up and make a lot of money. There's not any other country like that besides here. That's why everybody comes here, right? But at the same time, the last 100 years, we've had this dark side of capitalism that has just kind of been, running everything, running law enforcement, running politics, and I'm trying to show this whole story. Like, how did we get there? Because a lot of people think, oh, the government said it or they're right. But, look, like we even look today, I'm not a Biden fan. I'm not a Biden fan at all. He was the orchestrator, one of the orchestrators of the war on drugs. He's one of the reasons I did 21 years for the first time without a violent offense. And now all this stuff is coming out about Biden, how he is allegedly made, I've heard 30 million, 50 million through peddling influences. But, it's okay because he's a politician. But, if I want to make money selling, substances that I think are spiritual and therapeutic, I got to go to prison for 25 years. So, it's just all this different stuff where if you look at these stories from different perspectives through different lenses and different people, like the mafia and stuff like that, that's a picture I'm trying to paint, because the good guys, most of the time, the good guys aren't the good guys. And I'm not saying Lucky Luciano was a good guy, by any, he was a mobster, he was a gangster, but, it's like you said about those DEA agents, right? Like they could do whatever they want and get away with it. But me or you or the regular citizen, we're going to be punished for, if they bust us with a $5 crack rock, we're getting punished or going to jail, or a bag of marijuana or a joint. They find a joint, they're going to seize our car. But Biden and all these other government people, law enforcement people, they can do whatever they want because, they are on the side of right. It's just, it's ludicrous to me. It's ridiculous. I kind of been fighting this battle my whole life, since I was 13 and I first got into the counterculture. So, it's the same thing, like the hippies, like the counterculture. What did they do? The hippies came out, they didn't want war, they wanted to change stuff in the 60s. And what happened? They got crushed by the government.
Right.
So, I don't know, maybe we're in a different climate now, like I'm not sure like the government is going to come after me. I mean, I make films. I don't do anything, I like to smoke a joint every now and then, take a hit of acid, but, it's not like I'm a distributor or whatever. So, I think, things in that regard have kind of loosened up a bit, but still, man, it's a vicious, cut-through world, and it's all about money. So there's been like this 100-year war on substances that they determine are not good for us, because we have all these other substances that are good for us, and people have just been persecuted. They've had their lives taken, they've had their livelihood, like look at the cannabis farmers. These cannabis farmers sacrifice for 50 years, sacrifice, their life, their livelihood, went to prison, had military, helicopters flying over their lands and stuff. And none of this made them stop growing weed because, that's what they believed in because they were outlaws, But now it went legal, and now all these farmers are, they can't compete, because you can't, if you're a little guy, if you're a mom and pop, you can't compete with a Walmart. It's impossible. So I just try to show, a lot of, like I say, I love this country, but and I love capitalism, but I don't love, right now, I feel like the last 100 years, we've been in this age of dark capitalism. And hopefully, in the future, the next 50 or 100 years, that's how this last 100 years will be remembered. And I hope we're about to break out of it. I mean, you never know, but they're trying, to keep a hold and it seems like keep a lid on it and stuff like that. But, and like I say, like when we were growing up, like a lot of this stuff, we knew about this stuff, but it was like conspiracy theory. Because anything that's true that the government doesn't like, or the media, because they control the media, they control everything, bro. You know what I'm saying?
All the conspiracy theories that were out there when I was a kid are now coming true.
Yeah,
like now, like
true.
that wasn't a conspiracy theory. It was true. A theory. That's true. They're doing hearings in Congress on aliens or on UFOs. Like, come on, like, what do you listen, in the 80s when I was growing up, the idea that Congress would even consider having a hearing is ludicrous. They would never have done that. And now they're having these open hearings and showing films, and you're going, what is going on? They've got a whole department now focusing on this. Like, this is insane.
Yeah, because our government and the people that fund them, the elite corporations, that fund them, that they wanted to keep a lid on everything so they can control everything, control information. So, and like I say, we always talk about like the Nazis or like Stalin and all these other, dictators or bad people in history and like what they did. We've been doing the same thing here the whole time. It's just been disguised and swept under the rug. And, people make movies, about this.
We have a better marketing campaign. We have a better marketing campaign. The home of the, home of the free, land of the brave. We got a way better marketing campaign than the Soviets did. And that's, a lot of that, not all of it, but a lot of that, it boils down to really pushed the correct, the U.S. pushed the correct agenda that really does play to the masses, So the idea, it's great to say, hey, if you come join our crowd, we'll feed you, we'll give you bread and water and, free medical. But in the end, you can't. And when you can't provide that, and you got the Americans are saying, look, our system, the idea of capitalism is a little bit more brutal. It doesn't sound as good as communism. Like, the concept of communism is wonderful. We're all going to work together. We're all going to live off of the fruits of everyone's labor, and it's all going to be fair. That's great. It doesn't work. Capitalism says, really almost the opposite. If you work hard, bust your ass, you can make money. And if you don't, you'll fail. And that's a brutal concept. But the truth is, that's what works. And so when you say, hey, the peace and love, and we're all going to work together, when you start seeing that fail, and you realize that the harsher version is what works, and you've got a great marketing campaign, winning. It's all about winning, money, making tons of money, working hard and winning. And you see that over and over again. You start to say, hey, this is the way to go. And people flock to the United States and they work hard and they try and, like you said, but behind the scenes, most of these or our governments are doing a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah. No, totally. And it's the same thing. Because remember the 80s when we were growing up, they used to say 10% of the population had all the money. So right. What do they say now? 1%.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, yeah, it's like, you got these people at the top, like they got so much money, it's ridiculous. And you got the people at the bottom that have to live like 2-3 families in a house, can barely afford one car, working minimum wage jobs, just to make it. So,
the middle class in this country has shrunk by half in the last 30 years. It's a dramatic shrinking. And that was what made America great. We had this massive middle class. It just doesn't really exist. Now you have the haves and the haves not.
Yeah. I just think that whole kind of, 50s mentality, like the white picket fence, go work for somebody else for 20 years, get married and have kids. Like that's what was pushed, like through religion and government and stuff like that. I just think a lot of people now are kind of seeing it, because ever since the 80s, there's been more, kids born out of wedlock, there's been more divorce, that kind of old model has kind of, gone away. But still, that it's, I saw another statistic the other day that I thought was kind of crazy. Like it was talking about the age of politicians, and they say right now, 25% of our politicians are age 70 or older. Like that is crazy, bro. Like what are they, like you look at something like, like Biden and some of these other people, like, what are you still doing? Why are you able to make the decisions? It's
You're out of touch. Even if you said, hey, mentally, they were able to, they were mentally stable. You're still out of touch. Like that's the big thing about the Constitution, is that it as our culture, our civilization and country changes, the Constitution can change, and that's why it's one of the oldest I think it is the oldest document, government that's running. Even though we're a new country, it's the oldest government that's still in existence from the original Constitution, because it evolves and it grows. But the problem is the people that are putting these policies into effect and are well, I guess, passing new laws and looking at the new laws, they're out of, a lot of them, like you said, at least 25% of them are out of touch. Like a 75-year-old guy cannot relate with a 25-year-old. He's not, you're telling me, just like you said, with the cannabis, probably, well, one, it probably never should have been illegal, but two, 25 years ago. And here's the big thing is, listen, as of 50 years ago, you knew that the war on drugs wasn't working. You knew this is a failed policy. It's been failing for 50 years. And all you've done is bloat the police and the prison system and the court system. And you've spent trillions, not even billions, probably trillions of dollars locking people up and throwing away the key, when you could have been taking that same money and you could have been educating those people and treating addiction. You could have spent a third of the money they've spent and given free education and free addiction counseling to get to limit those, but it's like you said, it's about control. I think it's about control, and I think it's about getting votes. It sounds great to say I'm tough on crime. That's a great concept. And it is great. It's just not working.
And all these politicians are basically funded by, people, corporations or people or organizations with, they have agendas.
Right.
And they lobby, that's a politician. And I'm not going to blame anybody. People, this in the country, people to go where the money's at. But, it's just been going on so long, like my whole lifetime. I'm 52. I'm just like, what can I do? I already went to prison. I was behind the lines. And I think being in prison too really makes you see anything, because what they do in prison, they divide and conquer. They pit the races against each other, because there's like 1,000 dudes in a prison and there's only like 20 guards. So how else are you going to maintain control? You got to keep a scarcity of resources, so the people in prisons are fighting over the resources. That's how you maintain control. And before I went to prison, I didn't see it like that in the world. But once you go to prison, you see how they do it there. You come back out here and you can be like, they do the same thing. It's just like on a much larger scale. And they use the media, propaganda, and everything. So, back to dope, man. That's why, I'm trying to show, like, paint these like broad strokes, with stuff that people like, because people love mob stuff, right? So I'm kind of, like I say, I'm telling the surface story, but I got these broad strokes underneath that I'm trying to get people, so people can realize, just like we did with White Boy. White Boy, we never said, in White Boy that these people were corrupt or this one. We just showed what they did, and showed what happened, as juxtaposed, what happened to Rick. So we kind of try to show, like why is this stuff happening? And then people can make their own decisions.
Right. I was going to say, through entertainment, I think you learn a lot. There was a movie called Enemy at the Gate, and it was about the invasion of Stalingrad, and it was shown through the eyes of a famous sniper that was in the Battle of Stalingrad. And listen, it shows you the whole that whole invasion, the whole battle, the whole siege of Stalingrad in World War II. Listen, I walked away from that. It's like watching Private Ryan or something. You learn so much about history by watching those movies. You don't even realize what you're learning. You don't even realize, like, wow, like, I actually, they subtly get yourself a nice little history lesson while being entertained, because let's face it, everybody wants to be entertained.
Yeah, so that's what I'm just doing. I pick stuff that I like. I like mafia stuff. I like Canada stuff. I like psychedelic stuff. And that's what I just want to paint these pictures, man. I want to show people, and really, I mean, I'm not saying I'm biased, and you could say, I got a slanted perception because of everything I went through, but that is my reality. So I'm showing these stories through my lens, and hopefully people can realize, and it can open up some eyes. And but at the end of the day, I want to entertain people. I want people to think what I'm doing is cool. But I do have these underlying issues, and pretty much from my writing, pretty much everything I've done, I got these underlying issues.
So what about? I was noticing you have a lot of B-roll. Are you able to use B-roll from movies like what was the Untouchables, like?
Yeah, so it's like so it's kind of like like when rappers sample stuff,
Right.
you can use like so much. So in documentary and in journalism and in the news, it's called fair use. So if you notice, like when a news agency is taking footage like on the street or something, they don't have to get all those people to sign off because
Right.
it's journalism. But if you did a movie, that's why in a movie they block everything off.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because you can't. Nobody's signing releases. So it's the same with fair use. As long as you use a certain amount, like in White Boy, we use like the Beverly Hill Cops. A lot of times it's like under 6 seconds, or something like that. But yeah. So you can use it as long as you're using it, for a journalistic reason. And there's some like other things, like when you use something, like it can't be your main point, it can only be like supporting. So I might have somebody say like, oh, the myth of the mafia man of honor, or the mafia man of honor is a myth, and then I can show a little clip of the Godfather.
Right.
you know yeah, so yeah, that's how you do it. It's all fair use, man. And really, that's kind of like more the old school thing. But I mean, you see now with like YouTube, I mean, they just rip everything, dude. They just rip everything. People rip whatever they want and put it wherever they want. And maybe if they make a lot of money, there might be a lawsuit. But I mean, it's just information. And I don't know. I think that's cool, man. Because what I try to do when I make a film, I try to get all these different forms of media, and kind of mash them together. Like that's what we did at White Boy, where you get the archival footage, you get the newspaper articles, you get the talking head interviews, you get the animation, and you just kind of put it all together and mesh it all together. So when you're watching it, I think that's like really visually stimulating, because you just see all these different types of media, and forms of media, and it's all put together in one place. And even like the dope man, some of that stuff, people have seen in different stuff, because some of that footage that we found, it's been around forever,
Right.
you know. But I'm just putting it in this new construction where I'm telling this story, and kind of layering it, all the way through, So not only is the story good, and the narrative is good, but I want it to be visually appealing too.
Right. I was gonna say, because I noticed, like, there was like tons of B-roll, and the B-roll alone kind of tells a story. So
Yeah.
I was wondering, and I thought I'd seen some clips from movies that I'd recognized, and I thought, I wonder
Yeah,
if
yeah, yeah, yeah.
if he has to pay somebody to use that. But
No,
it
I
was always
couldn't afford.
very
Yeah,
clipped.
I
Right.
yeah, if you only use it real short, I couldn't afford it. I mean, you couldn't
Right.
afford. Even for White Boy, we got the Beverly Hills Cop stuff in there. We couldn't afford that, man. They try to charge you an arm and a leg. Even like it's weird because if you just go find something yourself and put it in, You know, a lot of times you can get away with it for fair use. But if you actually like go to the people and say like, oh, I want to use this, or then they're going to try to charge you a licensing fee. So
Right.
it's just crazy, you know. But now on the internet, I mean, you could pretty much find anything.
I was going to say, I had talked to a, a guy who's he's actually a director and the producer, but he was saying that, for example, if you said, "Yeah, I remember when I was leaving Tampa, we were headed, whatever, we were headed to Atlanta or something," that song whatever came on, you know, and he said, and because in the interview the guy mentions the song, he said we were able to play the song, so we can play. He said, where as opposed to a few seconds of it, he's like, we were able to use that song for the next whatever it was 30 seconds or so of the interview, and with b-roll. And then he said he had another interview where the guy was like, I forget what he said exactly, but let's say, it was like the scene in The Godfather when Michael says to, whatever, this, and then they show the scene. And it was more than the 2 or 3 seconds. It was like the whole scene. He said, but I could do that because in the course of the interview, the guy specifically mentioned the scene. He's like, so I'm just using it to support, that interview. And he said, as a
Yeah.
result of that, he said, we were able to play, a 12 or 15-second scene. So yeah, so
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, fair use. So that's the difference between docs and like a scripted film. You know, a scripted film has to be like totally original. You need all releases, you know, forms and stuff like that, or you got to license music or whatever. Where docs, it's journalism. It's just visual journalism. So you know, because you can see like on a news report, they could be interviewing somebody, and you know, a car drives by, you know, with "Fuck the Police" by NWA or whatever, you know, and they're not going to take it out, you know, so
right.
and they're not going to get sued. There's no liability because it's journalism.
Okay. Well, cool. So you're saying it's going to be up in about a month or so, roughly?
Yeah, maybe sooner. I would say definitely within the next month. I'd say definitely by the end of August. You know, so that's going to be up. Dopeman will be up. Nightlife will be up, and then sometime in September, my first episode of the Psychedelic Revolution: Secret History of the LSD Trade will be up, and then after that, probably in October sometime, A Tortured Mind, you know, the reality of post incarceration syndrome will be up. And I'd say then sometime in December before Christmas, the first episode of Tangled Roots will be up. I just want to be on the other side of it, man. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Uh, you know, it's been a struggle, you know, but this is kind of like, you know, 3 years of work, you know, that's kind of coming together. And it just so happens, you know, because I've been working on them all steadily. So it's all coming out at the same time. So I just want to be, you know, because that's like 5 hours of content for Outlaw Film. So that's going to be big. And I got a lot more stuff shot. So, you know, I got the makings of like 13 hours of content. You know, I just got to get it edited. You know, so next year I'll be coming out with more stuff, and then as soon as I get some of these projects off my plate, you know, and get some more funding, or the money starts coming back in from the films, I'm going to be looking for more projects because that's my goal, man. I kind of want to be the I want to be like the Quentin Tarantino of kind of this true crime counterculture documentary stuff, you know. And in the next 3 years, I'm planning on you know, developing and putting out on the market, you know, about 30 hours of content, all kind of in this, you know, same vein, you know, which it'll follow to true crime. But you know, like I say, my stuff is kind of more counterculture. I get better access, you know, because I was in prison for 21 years. I get better access than a lot of these mainstream filmmakers. And also, I think too, my work, I keep it more real, you know, because I'm just not a filmmaker coming into these cultures and examining them and making films about them. I'm from this culture, these cultures I'm talking about. You know, not like I'm a mafia guy, but I was with a ton of mafia dudes in federal prison, you know, for years, 21 years. I know these guys. I've talked to them. I've written about them. I've interviewed them, you know, in prison. So, you know, I don't know how many other journalists or filmmakers can say that.
All right. Well, so what, do you want to put a link? We can put some links in the description, or
Yeah. I mean, definitely when I have links, I mean, we could just use my website or the YouTube links because the YouTube, my YouTube channel, Seth Ferranti's True Crime, it has like all the documentary links. And then on my website too, guerrillaconvict.com, I have all the teasers. And then as the films become available, I'll be putting, those Amazon and iTunes links up and stuff like that. But yeah, it's not going to be long, man. It, like, probably within, I'd say, the next 60 to 90 days, I mean, like Dopeman and Nightlife are going to be everywhere,
All right.
because
Well,
it's going to, yeah, it'll be available Tubi, Roku, all the advertising video on demand and all the transactional video on demand platforms.
okay. Is there anything else we haven't talked about?
No, man, I think, yeah, we covered a lot of stuff, man. I hope people don't think we're conspiracy theorists.
No, I
We
sure
might
could
get
be.
we might get branded now. Or maybe
Listen, I
the
you
government's going
trust
to
me.
come after us.
Listen, I've had some conspiracy theory guys on here, so trust me, this is nothing
Yeah,
compared to that. This is
yeah,
very tame. Um,
yeah.
and honestly, let's face it, I would say about a 95% chance that all of it's absolutely legit, even though,
And I'd like to say too, like, how like law enforcement and the government people, they say like, oh, well, if you're selling drugs, we're coming after you. Yeah, well, I'm a filmmaker. I tell stories. So if you're in law enforcement and government and you're doing corrupt stuff and you're violating citizens and American people's rights, I'm gonna come after you and I'm gonna expose you and I'm gonna put you on TV. Same
listen,
thing.
they hate that. They
Yeah.
hate that.
And the
I
only
just
way
did
you could stop me is you can kill me because you already put me in prison for 21 years and I'm still doing it.
listen, I just had a guy who was a sheriff's deputy who was a whistleblower at Broward County, and he was complaining that the guys he was working with were ripping off the drug dealers. Like, they're stealing the money. They're taking these guys' money. We're supposed to put the money in the bag, and they're stealing these guys' money, and they're taking the drugs and reselling the drugs and keeping that money. And so he was like, you guys should be in jail. So they ended up setting him up, got him indicted. He actually went to trial and won at trial. I interviewed that guy 3 months ago. His video blew up. It got like, I think it's at almost 700,000 views now. So,
Yeah.
yeah, you wouldn't, like, you hear his story, you wouldn't believe it. This is just because
No.
he was a whistleblower in the
No,
department.
I do believe it. I do believe it. I've heard plenty of stories like that. I mean, when you're in prison for 21 years, you hear everything.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that's what I'm saying. They'll turn on their own.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. In a second, it's all
Right.
about
What are they going to?
self-preservation.
Yeah.
Yeah, those people, most of the people, I'm not saying everybody in law enforcement is bad. There's some good people in law enforcement. There's some good people in government. There's some good people in politicians. But if they're protecting the bad people, then they're just as complicit.
Hey, if you like the video, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, share the video, hit the bell so you get notified, leave me a comment. We're going to leave all of Seth's links in the description box, so check them out. And I really appreciate you guys watching the video. See ya. Hey, this is Matt Cox, and I'm here with Seth Ferranti, and we're going to do a podcast on Seth's story. Seth was I saw on Concrete, it was like what was it? He said you were like the LSD kingpin or something, or yeah. So basically, Seth was arrested and did 20. You got 25 years.
Yeah.
Did 21 years in federal prison for selling LSD.
Yeah,
right?
LSD and cannabis.
And cannabis. Okay, so all right, check it out. So, somebody asked me earlier too, and it was like the first question somebody asked me, and I didn't even know. Like, where were you born?
Yeah, I was born in Lemoore. Lemoore is actually out in the desert. They call it the Central Coast. It's between LA and San Diego.
Okay, and I kind of know the story. So you grew up there, and you said you started basically with just what? You started off just.
Yeah, no, I was a military brat. So I was actually born on like a Navy base. It's out in the desert. That's where like they train fighter pilots.
Right.
So my dad was basically a fighter pilot, and but he was the Navy. He used to fly off aircraft carriers. So we were in San Diego, we were in Virginia Beach, we were in Germany, we were in London, but we always ended back up in California usually until he retired. And that's kind of where my problem started, because I was like this California kid, and I ended up in Northern Virginia, like in this really kind of lily white upper class area, like right out of Washington D.C. when I was basically, you know, like a sophomore, junior in high school, and being from California, you know, and at that age, like, you know, everybody were going out partying, and just the weed that they just got like garbage weed. It was like all brick weed, like brown shit.
Right.
And then like if they could get LSD or something like that, it was just like super expensive, like $20 a hit. So, I mean, I knew a lot of people, you know, I had a lot of friends that were getting into that stuff, you know, back in California. So I started getting weed sent, you know, from Northern California, you know, like Emerald Triangle, Humboldt County bud. And from like San Francisco, I started getting LSD sent.
Okay. But you were, how old were you at that time when you were?
Man, I was
You were
young.
young.
I was like 16, yeah. So I was like 16. And at first, I mean, it was just for personal.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I would just get personal. Like, you know, 5 or 6 of us, we would kind of put our money together, and, you know, I'd get it sent and I'd send the money. And, but then eventually, like, you know, if you do drugs, and a lot of young kids, you know, kind of figure this out, or at least the smarter young kids figure this out. So when you're young and you're doing drugs, you know, and then finally you're like, well, fuck it. If I can get it, why should I pay for it?
Right.
So that's like the first thing. You're like, you do it for free drugs. But then, you know, after you do that for a while, you're like, well, fuck it. I don't want to pay for it, and I want to make money.
Right.
So, you know, this was, and it wasn't something that just happened overnight. So this was a gradual thing. Like, you know, over my first probably 9 to 12 months in Northern Virginia, you know, where I've like, hey man, I can make money off this shit, you know, and then other stuff happened. Like I started going on tour, like at 17, I started going on Grateful Dead tour. And anybody that knows anything about the Grateful Dead tour, like in the late 80s, you know, like we're talking like 1988,
Right.
you know, like what they call Shakedown Street or the Lot. I mean, it was basically like an open air drug market.
Right.
So, and like I say, when I say open air drug market, I don't mean like cocaine, heroin. There was that stuff around, but it's mostly like I call, you know, like I'm a weed and psychedelics dude. You know,
Right.
I was never into cocaine. I was never into heroin, speed. You know, I hate amphetamines. I don't even like MDMA. You know, I've never been like a you know, amphetamine type of guy. So I was always into like the psychedelics, you know, and cannabis, you know, hash, mushrooms, you know, even stuff like peyote, mescaline, you know, so that was kind of like where I leaned, you know, kind of on that side. So I would go to these Dead shows. And the big thing about the Dead shows, like, I mean, it's just this big lot and everybody's selling drugs. So I had 2 reasons I went to the Dead shows. One reason is because I established a connect down in Kentucky that grew weed, and they grew pretty good weed, you know, compared to the brick weed from Texas that was coming around. So I would take that weed, I would grab that weed for whatever, $1,600, $1,800 a pound. And I would take that on Dead tour and I would sell it for $200 an ounce. And if it was good weed, like what they call kind bud, and when they say kind bud, they were referring to like the bud from Humboldt County, you know, the Emerald Triangle, which I could usually only get in the fall, you know,
Right.
in harvest time. But that's what they wanted. They wanted that good sun-grown organic
Because the
bud.
brick weed was basically crap.
The brick weed was crap. So, you know, that's what the Deadheads wanted, you know, to go with that whole hippie vibe. So I started going and I started selling bud on tour. You know, and I was making a, you know, considerable amount of money, not doubling my money, but, you know, I was usually making like, you know, $1,200 a pound. And it was easier to get, I got better LSD contacts on tour. Cause, you know, I had some friends and they could get like some sheets here and there, but they couldn't really, you know, like hit me off. And I had to pay like, you know, I wasn't paying wholesale prices. Like they were getting it basically like retail prices, you know, but still, you know, not like, they were selling hits, you know, I was buying whole sheets from them, you know, so I was probably getting like paying like $1 or $2 a hit and selling it for $5 a hit. But then I knew if I went on tour and I hooked up with the right people, I could basically get it for like 30, 40 cents a hit.
You're not making it though. You just have a contact.
Yeah, no, I never made it. So, you know, but,
Because when I was locked up, I met one guy, the whole time I was locked up, one guy that actually made LSD. I mean, because, you know, it's not like it's easy. It's not like growing weed. It's like this guy.
You got to be a chemist. I mean, you got to be a chemist. So, you know, so, so what I know about the whole LSD trade is a lot of times at the shows, they would fly in the liquid. So, you know, they fly in like 25 grams. at a time. But, each one of those grams makes 10,000 hits,
Yeah.
To give you the number. So pretty much every Dead show, and the Dead used to crisscross the nation. They used to play everywhere, and they would play multiple nights. So every show, every town, like let's say they played 3 nights in Philly, from San Francisco, all that stuff is still basically made in that area. All the chemists, and a lot of times it's the same guys from the 60s, maybe they have like, they mentored other guys, younger guys, and brought other guys into the trade. But, it's not like a big group of people. I mean, they keep it pretty, secret, because it's a lot to even, like now, to even get the precursors and all the other stuff. I mean, they've outlawed a lot of that stuff. So it's really hard to get the stuff to make it, but I mean, like I say, one gram is 10,000 hits. So you don't need a lot.
Yeah, the guy was telling me like they would get the sheets of paper and the perforated sheets of paper, and he was like, you're literally just putting a droplet on each.
Yeah, the blotter paper. Well, what also they do is they actually dip it.
The whole sheet.
Yeah, they dip it. So like what you got, like one sheet of 100 hits is about this big. So that's like a sheet, and then they would have what you call like a page. So a page would be like 100 of those.
All right. Okay.
Or no, 10 of those. So that would be like 1,000 hits.
Okay.
100. And then they had what you call a book, would be 10 pages. And then, that would be like 10,000 hits. That's like a gram of LSD, But it's all the blotter paper, it absorbs it. And that's pretty much, I mean, it's not a perfect science because some places might absorb more than others.
Right.
I've talked to a lot of chemists. So, that's basically, they've kind of explained a lot of the stuff to me. But yeah, I've never done it. But I know they would fly it in, and then like when they get it there, then they would go through the process of laying it on the sheets, where they kind of dip it in it or whatever,
right?
And they all would also do a lot of liquid. I remember going to the shows, and this is kind of funny because whenever there were shows, they would have a lot of the deadheads or the hippie kids would go to the local grocery stores, and they would buy all the boxes of the food coloring. Like the food coloring, it comes in these like little boxes, and there's like 10 or something, or sometimes 5.
Right.
And those were like what they would use for the vials. So they would get that food coloring and they would pour it all out, and clean it out. And then they would fill that up, because that one vial in that food coloring, that was like 100, that was like 100 hits. So they would sell vials too, because some people would do like straight liquid. I did some liquid one time. So one time I was at some shows in Pittsburgh, like in '89. And, I'd always been a big fan of Jimi Hendrix. And I used to read how Jimi Hendrix, he used to take his bandana and he would just pour like a whole vial of acid on his bandana, and then he would wrap it around his head. So it's not like he was taking 100 hits, but I mean, he was absorbing.
Yeah, he's still absorbing it.
A lot of that. So one time at this show in Pittsburgh, it was actually right after Brett Midland, the keyboardist, a real popular keyboardist, died. He like OD'd on a speedball. And I was like, man, I was on this Jimi Hendrix trip. Maybe I'd seen some documentary or something, I don't know, or read about it in Rolling Stone or something. So I actually took and I poured 3/4 of a bottle, basically like 75 hits on a bandana, and then I wrapped it around my head. And this is like before the show starts, because back then it was way different. Back then, like, you had like free reign in the whole stadium, man. It wasn't like all the security, like they cordoned off this area and you can only go here with your tickets. Like back then, dude, like you gave your ticket, you went in the stadium,
you go anywhere
from the lot. Yeah, you can even go back out to the lot, because the lot's like, Shakedown Street. So it's like a party and stuff like that. So this one time I did it, and I took all this fucking 75 hits, right? And we're waiting for the show to start, and everybody used to go up to the top. So this is Three River Stadium in Pittsburgh. Everybody would go up to the top and smoke weed, because you don't want to smoke weed. You didn't want to front out the security or whatever. So if you went up top, they didn't give a fuck. So we walked up, me and my buddy. He'd only take maybe like 25 hits. He took the rest of the bottle, but he drank it, So, he took like really ingested 25 hits. I don't know how. Mine was 75 hits, but it was in a bandana, so it's not like I took 75 hits.
Right.
But it was, going into my skin. So we walked up to go to the smoking section, everybody's smoking weed. And so we're up there, everybody got their, big ounces or quarter pounds. We're rolling up fatties and we're smoking them. And then like the show starts, so like everybody goes back down to the field, because then it would just be the whole field would just be like wide open and everybody be dancing. So me and my buddy, though, like the trip starts, kicking in. Right. So we're like looking at the steps, like in a lot of the stadiums, I mean, it's kind of steep,
Right.
so we're like, you start tripping balls, right? So we don't go back down. We're like, oh no, we're just gonna stay up here. We're gonna smoke some more weed. So it ended up, we stayed up there, and this is like, I mean, they used to play, they play like 2 sets, man. So they play like, like an hour and a half, and then they come back, play another hour and a half. So this is like 3 hours, dude. Like we're up there, like our friends keep coming up trying to, hey man, come down. And we're like looking, we're like, fuck no. Like a couple times we would try to walk down the steps.
It's too steep, right?
Because we were tripping fucking balls,
right,
man. So we couldn't walk down. So eventually, like the show's over, and like we stayed up there the whole time. And eventually everybody leaves, right? And like the people are going around cleaning, and they're like looking at us like, what the fuck are these dudes doing? We're just up there like smoking weed, tripping. And so I don't even know. It seemed like forever, but eventually like a dude, one of the custodian guys comes to us, and he was like, yo, man, he's like, they're about to lock the doors of the stadium. Like, you need to go now. You need to get the fuck out of here. And there's like nobody. There's just like trash everywhere, people picking up shit. So finally, we actually we crawled down, like backwards, on the steps, like crawled down backwards until we got to like the, like one of the main floors, and then we could walk out. But yeah, that was crazy. That's the most acid I ever took at one time. And like I can only say I remember it, but I mean, it was, I think I had a good time, even though like I missed a show and I was like scared to walk out because it was like a ledge, man. It was like crazy. I still, to this day, I have like vivid memories of trying, like I'm telling you, probably in that however many hours, 3 to 5 hours, I probably attempted to walk down those steps like 20 or 25 times, me and my buddy. And I couldn't do it. It was not happening until finally and acid lasts a long time too. So, I was still tripping. It was just like, they were going to lock the door and I didn't want to get fucking, locked in the fucking stadium.
So I mean, at some point though, like you started, I mean, you kind of started selling more and more, you're making money at it.
Yeah, really, my business kind of exploded when everybody started going to college.
Right.
So, first I'm like a sophomore, and then I'm getting more into it when I'm a junior. And, like I say, I'm selling to the sophomores and I'm selling to the seniors. And I was kind of like that guy. I was kind of like that dude in high school. Like if you wanted weed, if you wanted LSD, I was like the dude. And I don't care. I would sell like 10 sheets. I would sell multiple sheets. I would sell like 5 or 10 hits. Because I was like, whatever. It was all money to me. Plus, I always felt like I was feeling a need, because I felt like people wanted good, clean drugs, and I always felt like, weed and LSD, and mushrooms and stuff like that. I always felt they were good drugs. I didn't feel like they were bad drugs. I didn't carry a gun. I didn't have a criminal organization. You know what I'm saying? I go around, beat people up. A lot of times people paid cash. A lot of people I fronted stuff to people. A lot of times people that I fronted stuff to were my friends, and they fucked up the money, and I still didn't do it. I was like, well, whatever. I can make more money. Right. That was always kind of like my attitude. So
you were saying you didn't really feel like it should be illegal anyway. I mean, it's
I tell people to this day, this is my big thing, right? I was never a criminal, right? I broke laws that I thought were wrong.
Right.
I was an outlaw. You know what I'm saying? So, like I say, to me, there's a difference. I mean, in prison, you got criminals and you got outlaws, and maybe to the government and law enforcement, it's all the same because, we're breaking the laws of society. But, I mean, there's a difference. Anybody, I mean, you've been in prison, man. There's a difference. A lot of times a criminal is going to do whatever he can. A criminal, like, fuck you over for $1.
Right.
Where, like, an outlaw has, like, morals.
Some kind of code that he's trying to live by.
Yeah, so there's a big difference, but so I probably really exploded probably around 89. When I was a senior. So a lot of my friends had went off to colleges, and were like freshmen, and so I went to Robinson, and Robinson was a big school in Fairfax County. So Robinson was probably like 4,000 people, and then we had a sister school that was like not even 5 miles away called Lake Braddock. And Lake Braddock would have like 4,000 kids. And so, for 2 years, going on 3 years, I had been selling, drugs, LSD and weed to all these people in these schools, you know, going all the parties. And, you know, like I say, everybody smoked weed back then. It didn't matter, you know, if you were a jock, you know, if you were a stoner, you know, if you, like we called them truckers, like the dudes with the big 4x4s,
Right.
you know, if you know, some Virginia, you got like the more country dudes, you know, so it didn't, you know, the cheerleaders, you know, the popular kids, everybody smoked weed. Everybody did LSD. Everybody did mushrooms. You know, some of them did coke, but, you know, I didn't really fuck with those people. That wasn't really my scene. So when these people started going to colleges, like, and these are all good kids from good families, you know, not necessarily like super rich, you know, some more rich than others, but all upper middle class, you know, like all these kids, like they got a Mustang or like a hand-me-down Beamer or Mercedes when they were 16.
Right.
You know, and, you know, so when they all went off, they went to all these colleges, you know, like Penn State, you know, University of Maryland, you know, Kentucky University, UK, you know, West Virginia University, you know, all the way like Virginia Tech,
Right.
you know, Radford, you know, VCU, you know, all the Virginia schools. So I just had like all these friends that went to all these different colleges and all within, you know, pretty much neighboring states to Virginia. So
But
when
they still need drugs.
yeah, so they're going, and I mean, you want to go because, like, when you're a senior, you want to go to the colleges anyhow because you want to
Right.
party, you know, check out the girls and see what college is like. Because I mean, that's what it's about in the suburbs. You know, you go to school and then you know you go to college and it's like a party. So, like they're calling me up there, you know, and I'm going and they want me to bring drugs. They're like, hey, dude, what can you bring? Whatever. They're like, I need this for me, and like my whole frat, everybody needs shit. So I started going, and it just like turned in. It was like just this little kind of local thing, you know, where I was kind of like, you know, a retail dude, but not really a big wholesale. I did maybe a little wholesale, but that was like real small part of my market. It was mostly retail,
Right.
you know, hand-to-hand stuff. And it just turned into where, you know, I remember the first time I went to Radford, right? I went to Radford in the beginning of the semester, so late August 1990. And Radford is like kind of like the sister school to Virginia Tech. Radford used to be like an all-girls school, but then, you know, then they changed it so guys could come. And Virginia Tech is like right there too. So it's these two, you know, Virginia Tech is a really huge school, but Radford's a pretty big school. So like August 1990, I go to Radford, and I had just picked up some bud that they just harvested in Kentucky. And back then, like sometimes like in the summer, like it would get dry, man. Like you couldn't find any weed. And if you did find weed, it would be like brown, you know, garbage brick weed with seeds. So I was always known for getting the good bud from like Kentucky or Northern California. So this time I brought like a ton of, not a ton, but probably like 20 pounds, you know, just harvested fresh, you know, good green bud. And I actually go to my dude's house, right? And my dude has a house, and it's kind of like a little, you know, duplex apartment thing. So like he has a house right here, and then his buddy has a house right here. And so I bring bud, and he's like, man, nobody has bud. He's like, everybody wants bud. I'm like, well, fucking call him, dude. I'm like, we're here. So we break out the fucking triple beam, right? And first I'm like in his room, and like people are coming, but you know, it was like so many fucking people, like it was like crazy. So what we ended up doing is we ended up going to his friend's apartment, which was like kind of connecting, you know, across the way. And we had that door, and we put like a table in front of the door, like we're a fucking vendor. And me and this other dude, you know, my road partner, we're basically weighing stuff out. And there was like a line. So there was like a line all through this walkway and all through my friend's house, because they would come in my friend's house, the front door, and then, you know, come out in this side door, and we'd go, and it was like a line, dude. And we like literally quartered, ounced up weed for probably like 3 hours straight, you know. And I would like literally like sitting at the table throwing fucking money in the bag. Like, I don't even know how much money, I don't even know how much weed I'm selling. But, you know, at the end, I mean, we still had some left. I probably had about 5 or 6 pounds left. But I literally probably sold 14, 15 pounds in 3 hours, all for like quarters and ounces. And I just had like this big duffel bag of money, you know, and that was just like, that's like what it was back then. And I did that. And once I did that, first I was like, man, I can make a lot of money doing this. You know, that was my first thought. But second, I was like, man, I got to find a better fucking process, because this is like some bullshit. Because it's, you know, I mean, back then it was marijuana, you know, the war on drugs and all that shit. I was like, man, this is like too open, you know. So what I did among the people I knew at the different colleges, you know, because I had some situations at other colleges like that, you know, that was the most extreme situation.
Right.
That's why I'm telling the story. But, you know, I had different situations like
Paints
that.
a good scene, though.
Yeah. So I just started finding dudes, like some of my friends, you know, like the smartest, most trustworthy or on point friends. And I would just go to them and I'd say, look, dude, check this out. I'm going to come in. I'm going to drop you like 20 sheets of acid. I'm going to drop you like 5 pounds of bud. And then, you know, you can do all the hand-to-hand sales. And, you know, this is how much you owe me. And then I'll come back and get it.
Right.
So I did that at all these different colleges. So I started doing this loop, you know, where I would go down 81 in Virginia and hit all the Virginia colleges. Then I would come back through Kentucky. I would go to Eastern Kentucky. And then I would go up to UK. Then I would come back to West Virginia University, which West Virginia University in Morgantown was like my hugest market, man. That place, at that time in the late 80s, like West Virginia, like in Playboy magazine, like West Virginia University was always like in the top 5 party colleges. You know, like it was just fucking crazy. It was just known.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They always had like a big football program. You know, they were always kind of big in football, but they were just known. It was known as like a super party college. So, and I had my buddies were in the Delta Tau Delta fraternity, and they had this big fucking huge old dilapidated mansion like on Frat Row, and they just used to have these big ass fucking parties. So they used to have they used to have this party. It was called the the backyard, not the backyard brawl, but it was called like the backyard something. I can't think of the second name. So it was called like the backyard brawl or backyard
bash or something, whatever.
That's it, backyard bash.
Right.
You got the word. So it was called the backyard bash. So they would have this party, and there would be like literally 5,000 kids, and they would always have it right in the beginning of the semester. And there would literally be 5,000 kids like going through this old dilapidated mansion, and then they had like this big, you know, backyard and parking spot, and they would get like reggae bands and stuff like that. And so I would go to there, and you know, at first, like it would be like I would be selling hand to hand. Eventually, I got one of my dudes to do everything. But like their parties were so big that eventually West Virginia University like told them they couldn't have the backyard bash anymore. They were like, "You guys, that party's outlawed. You can't have it." So like, you know what these dudes did, right? Because these are like some little, you know, little smart, you know, also entitled rich
Right.
kids. They were like, okay. So they called it the Ackyard Ash, you bring the bees.
Okay.
So they just changed the name like that and still had the same fucking party. You know, they were basically like, fuck the university. But that's what I did. I cultivated these relationships. I kind of made friends of mine that were drug users, you know, partiers into drug dealers. And
So now you're just the distributor.
yeah, so this started like 89. So then by the time like 91, when I'm really rolling, I'm basically supplying like 15 colleges in 5 states with weed and LSD.
Okay. That's a full-time job.
No, definitely. Like I say, at this time too, like I didn't work a job because that was my job, but I actually went to college a couple times, just like, you know, the local community college. But it was always like I came down to Florida, dude. I came down to Florida in 89, in the fall of 89. And I was enrolled at, what's it called? The USF.
Okay. Yeah.
I was
That's where I got
enrolled.
my
Yeah.
degree.
Yeah, I was enrolled in USF, right? In the fall of 89. But I mean, it didn't last because I was just drawn, you know, I was drawn to like the Dead shows. I was drawn to the Dead scene. You know, I was drawn to the, you know, just like to me, because to me being that drug dealer, it was like being a rock star.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it wasn't even the money; it was a lifestyle. And not to say, I mean,
No, you're the guy calling the shots. Everybody's like, hey, they need
Wow.
something from you, and they treat you with respect, and you know, yeah. I mean, I know. It's,
and then too, it's like just the chicks, dude. Because like I had like multiple girlfriends, just like at colleges. I would have like different chicks. Like I would like if they were in the dorms, I would move them out, get them an apartment, just so I had like a safe place to lay my head, and I would pay like their apartments. So like I said, I was making a lot of money for a teenager.
right.
I mean, I always tell people, like, I was making like 30,000 a month.
Right.
Like, not generating, like I was making profit. I mean, generating, I was probably, generating like, a couple 100,000 a month.
Right.
But I was literally making, 25, 30 grand a month.
I mean, 20 grand, 30 grand a month is a lot of money for a grown adult. Raising a family, that's a ton of money for a kid. That's
and this was like 89, 90. But really, I always tell people too, because, I sold drugs, so probably from like, whatever, 16 to I got busted at 20. So 4 years. But it was really only like 9 months where I was at that height. So it was that last 9 months, like 90, into when I caught my case, the fall of 91. So, because before, like everything I'll explain, this is when I'm like putting everything together. I'm getting all my sources and my contacts straight. I got it eventually. Like, I didn't even have to go on tour to get the acid, because I developed where they would send me like 100 sheets, 10,000 hits. And I was basically getting like 100,000 hits a month, sent to me. And then for the weed, I would get in the fall to about January, I would get weed sent from, San Francisco, from like Northern California, Emerald Triangle bud. And I would drive down to Kentucky myself and get their bud, which was that they grew domestically, which was pretty good. It wasn't as good as a Humboldt bud, but it was close. And then the rest of the year, from January until like August, I would basically get the brick pot, the Mexican brick pot. And I used to get a lot of weed out of Fort Myers. I would drive down to Fort Myers, Florida. I used to go to Dallas, Texas. I'd fly to Dallas, Texas, but I would drive down to Fort Myers, Florida, and I would get weed from, actually, it was like Kentucky dudes that were getting the weed down here. Like, so they'd grow the weed, all year in the fall. And then in the winter, sometimes they would come down here, to kind of keep the business going. So I'd go down to Fort Myers, and I wasn't picking up a lot, man. And, I pick up like whatever, 50 pounds, 100 pounds of brick pot, which when it's all compressed like that, it's not that much. And also what I was doing was I was flying down to Dallas, and I would bring money, and I would get like 50 pounds or something, 40, 50 pounds. And I would actually pack it in a suitcase, and I would check it, and I would fly back with it. Like I was doing that like when I was 17. So that was crazy, because back then you could go right to the airport, right? And you could say, like, you could buy a ticket. You could say, like, my name is Joe Smith.
Right. And
you could pay him cash for a one-way ticket. And
no red flags, no
nothing. And I'd go down with it. Like, I had this big green 1970s Samsonite, suitcase, huge, probably like, this big.
Right.
And I fly down, I check it, it was empty. You know what I'm saying? And I go down and I literally sit at my buddies down there, because I had some buddies that went to University of Texas at Arlington. So and they had developed some Mexican contacts down there. So I would literally go down there, sit and wait on the Mexican dudes, until they had their shit ready. I dealt with this one dude named Mexican Eddie, and I would literally get the weed, buy it, pack it back in the suitcase. I'd wrap it and stuff like that. And then I would check it in my luggage. I'd go back, buy a one-way ticket, cash. This time I might be Chris Smith.
Right.
And go to, Dulles or, DC National Airport and go pick it up off the carousel. So, I didn't do that a lot, but I probably did that like, I don't know, 15 times over the years. But mostly I was a smuggler. I was a driver. That's what I did, because I figured out at a very early age, if you buy a product or drug like weed or LSD in one point, and brought it to another point, that's how you made money.
Yeah, you could leave that on the table. You don't have to. It's not a big deal.
Right.
This is pretty casual.
I'm just like, I'm a director, so I'm like anal with get everything out of the fucking shot.
I was thinking the Fort Myers thing. I wrote a story about these two guys that ran basically, like, it was one of the largest bust in that area from the DEA. I think they got caught with like 1,200 pounds or something. It was just like, and to get seized, to get caught with 1,200 pounds, God only knows what, if that's just the one thing they caught you with.
Yeah, that's just the one shipment.
Yeah. But that was Fort Myers. Fort Myers is a big, it's big for marijuana, for bringing in marijuana. Plus, what was the other guy's name that we did?
Cowboy.
Saltwater Cowboy. Yeah, he was
Tim McBride.
Yeah, Tim McBride. He's off.
Yeah, he was in the Keys. He was in the Keys. Oh, that dude was a huge fucking marijuana smuggler.
Yeah, he's an interesting character too.
See, that's why I always look like. I'm not saying for a teenager. I was a big drug dealer for a teenager, but like when I really look at it, like after doing all that time in the feds and stuff like that, like I look at it. I mean, I was a small timer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, for a kid, yeah. I mean, and who knows if I didn't get busted, maybe I would have got bigger. You never know. But once I got in the feds, and even like dude like Tim, like I mean, those dudes were just. Right. I mean, they're bringing in fucking tons. So, I mean, when you got an organization or a crew that's bringing in tons, I mean, really what I was doing, I mean, I'm like a minnow. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but it's hard to, it's, you get in front of the judge and you could, they make
they don't give a fuck. They act like I was fucking John Gotti or Pablo Escobar or the fucking suburbs, the fucking feds. Every fucking new case is public enemy number one.
Yeah. Absolutely. I always love that these guys get in front of the judge and they make him sound like just the most dangerous criminal in the world, and then they send him to a low. Yeah. Or they send him to a camp. You're like, if I'm so dangerous, how did I go directly to a camp?
No, it's fucking crazy, man. That's our criminal justice system, man. It's they got all their priorities wrong. But
sorry.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I had like 9 months where I was rolling, where like I was like, I mean, I was probably the man, but like I was really feeling myself. Like I thought I was a man, where it was where like I had built everything up over a couple years. And, even too, like as a kid, I mean, teenagers, I mean, you second guess yourself, you're insecure, so I was doing this for several years and, maybe I still didn't feel how I wanted to feel. And then like, dude, I had like that last 9 months before I got busted. Like I was on top of the world. Like I could literally, I felt like do anything I wanted. I had enough money. One time right before I got busted, dude, like I went to Hawaii. I just went to Hawaii for 2 fucking months, dude. I was like, man, fuck it. I was like, I'm going to get the fuck out of here. So I put a couple dudes, that actually, they ended up on my case and they ended up telling on me. But I put them, I said, okay, you're in charge of the weed. You're in charge of the LSD. Right. I'm just going to go to fucking, just fucking stack my money. I'm going to go to fucking Hawaii for fucking 2 months and just chill out. But yeah, and then, like I say, I had a bunch of different girlfriends. But I was always the type of dude, too, usually, like, I would have like runs with girls, I would have like I would always have a main girl. Well, I had like a 6 to 9 month run with her and she'd be like my girl, even though I might've had, other girls that I just saw every now and then,
right.
But that was kind of like, there's some 80s stuff. I don't know. Maybe people would look down on that today.
I don't.
It's a more sensitive world today.
So what was the catalyst that brought it all down?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, looking back, I mean, at the time, I thought it was like a real bright idea, but looking back, it was probably pretty stupid. So, the summer of 91, usually like in the summer, it would get dry. There's no weed, right? So before I took that trip to Hawaii, in the spring of 91, I set shit up because I was always gearing up for the fall because with the fall was when I could really make money. So I needed to like get my money up for the fall. So when they harvested in Northern California and Kentucky, so I could buy up a lot of bud because you want to buy up in the harvest, you want to buy up of the bud early. Like you want to buy when the farmers are hunting, like late August, September, because you can get shit for cheaper.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Then by like October, November, by January. So it's like the weed you can get for $1,600 in September. By January, that weed might be like $3,000.
Right.
So that was always my thing because, I was trying to maximize my profits. So I had this bright idea in the spring of 91 when all my friends were going to be home from school, because school was over. I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm going to fucking sell as much acid as I can this summer so I can get my money up for the fall. And plus, like I say, that 9 months I was making money, but I was probably spending money recklessly because when you got money coming in that young, like water, I mean, it was just going out the door like water. I didn't give a fuck. I was just like fucking spend money on anything. I didn't give a fuck. I was dumb. I was the type of kid, and I'm sure, you know, you might have known kids like this, but I was a kid that I would buy like some expensive polo t-shirts or whatever, and I would wear that shit one time.
Right.
And I would give it away because I was like, I only wear new shirts. That was like my thing. Like, I only wear new shirts. I don't wear fucking old shirts. I don't wash my shit. You know, like I'm saying? So, you know, I mean, I had some shit that I probably wash, you know,
right.
you know, keep it real, whatever. But, you know, that was like my thing. You know, I'm not going to front, like every fucking shirt I had was like brand new. But that was like one of my things. And also another one of my things was sneakers, man. I was a fucking sneakerhead, you know, so the Air Jordans had started coming out like probably like 85, 86. So, you know, by like, you're talking like 90, 91, there's like a fucking shitload of Air Jordans and a shitload, you know, everybody else jumped on the sneakers. So like, I literally had like hundreds and hundreds of pairs of fucking high tops.
Yeah, that sounds like Boziak. He had like a storage unit filled with 200-300 pairs of sneakers. It was just like he had a wall like in his room that was just sneakers. I was like, "Are you wearing all the sneakers?" He's like, "No, I never wear them."
I just had them. I just like to go buy them.
Yeah, he said.
I just like to spend the money, dude. To me, it was like just go and spend it. And I always had this thing like just spending cash, dude. I just love to spend cash, you know, because everybody else is like credit cards. Right. I just used to like, dude, like literally, and not like I'm spending over $10,000 or because they still had that $10,000 thing back then. But, you know, I just used to love to go to like stores or go to the mall and just fucking drop like $5,000 or $6,000. You know, and I would buy mostly myself, but sometimes it might be girls. I might bring some guys in my crew. I'd buy them shit too. And I would just go on these fucking whatever I had, a 5, 6, 7, 8. And I would just fucking drop that shit in the fucking mall in a day. But so I'm fucking, you know, doing all, went off on a tangent again, but you know, right. Yeah. So, you know, I'm trying to get my money up because I was fucking spending reckless, like how I just described. And so I just had this fucking awesome idea. I'm like, fuck, because I knew it's going to be dry. I knew there's going to be no weed. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to fucking pump out as much fucking acid as I can in the summer of 91. And I'm going to make as much money as I can. So I got my money stacked for the fall so I can fucking make a killing. Because I know the falls is when I'm really going to make the killing. Every fall, that's when I made a lot of money. So all my friends are back from the colleges. So they don't have the whole college to sell to. It's just all my fucking high school friends from these two high schools, Robinson and Lake Braddock. And so, dude, so literally acid is going for like $5, $6 a hit. I flooded the areas with so much fucking acid. Like usually I would do like, 10,000 hits a month, but that's like all the colleges. Right. So now I'm going to get like 150 sheets. I'm going to get like 15,000, 20,000 hits. And I'm going to flood it. All my people are in Fairfax County. You know, there's no colleges. So the price of acid that summer went from like $5, $6 a hit down to like $1 to $2 a hit. Because I flooded it so much, you know, like, you know, I mean, looking back, I was a fucking dumbass, you know, cut my own throat, but whatever. You know, at the time, I thought I was fucking brilliant. I was like, yeah. So not only did I flood the area, but it was just, I mean, there's fucking acid. There's just, everybody's just tripping all fucking summer. And eventually, what happened is there was this kid, I never met the kid, but he was like a little 15-year-old kid. He was at this big field party in Clifton. You know, Clifton was like the kind of real ritzy area in Fairfax County where they had like the $1 million houses and they would have like these big, 5-6 acre lots. So the kids that lived there, when their parents, just like when any parents would, go on vacation, they would throw parties, except they would throw like these big field parties, and people would bring like stages for bands, or they might bring like fucking skateboard ramps and all types of shit. So it'd be like this fucking crazy fucking scene. And so there was this big party, but eventually, like all parties out in the suburbs, eventually the cops are called. So this one kid was tripping balls on acid, and the cops came, and somehow he was running through the woods naked. And like a cop was chasing him,
Right.
And the cop like tackled him. And for some reason, this kid grabbed the cop's, service revolver, and luckily only shot him in the arm.
Right.
So I mean, whatever, flesh wound, but I'm sure it was painful, whatever. I don't know if it hit the bone. I don't know all the exact details, but I know he shot him in the arm. And so once this happened, and then that kid, like, whatever, he said, yeah, he was blamed it on the acid.
Of course.
Told him where he got the acid from. And
which he could have been drunk and the same fucking thing would have happened. And who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I always say, look, if it's in you, it's in you.
Yeah,
the drug is not going to bring it out.
Right.
You know? Just like in prison, like when they talk about dudes do homosexual shit. If it's in you, it was in you before. In
Well,
multiple ways, it was in you.
I was just. Well, it's just when I'm in prison, bro. Yeah. So,
so this happens, and actually, the dude that sold him the acid was actually, I knew him personally because at one time he went to Lake Braddock. I had sold to him, for probably my first 2 years. Yeah. But by this time, there's 7 people between me and him, because he was a cool dude, but he was like this metal dude. He actually ended up on my case, but he was this metal dude, and I just thought, like, the way he sold drugs, he would just sell to anybody, So I didn't, so there was 7 people separated, between me and him, but it was still all my shit. So this kid said he got it from this guy. His name was Dave, the metal guy, and and they started an investigation, man, and really it was like, and this is how law enforcement in this country reacts too. Like, if you do something to law enforcement, like if you shoot a cop or something, like, they go hard, man. They don't fuck around. Like,
they take it seriously now.
Yeah, they're like, man, like, you touched one of ours. They're like a gang, like any fucking gang of the mafia. Just like the criminals, you touch one of theirs, they're gonna go hard. The fucking cops go harder than everybody. So they basically had a witch hunt that summer, man. It was like a LSD witch hunt.
So the dominoes start just pop, 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 pop.
Yeah, they were trying to find, where the fuck is this shit coming from? And also, like, everybody knew my name. Everybody knew Seth, right? Because, now Seth is more common because you got like Seth Rogen or, Seth MacFarlane. So there's some famous people named Seth. But back then, 91, nobody was fucking named Seth.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So my name stuck out. So everybody, everybody's Seth, Seth. So they keep hearing Seth, Seth, Seth. They don't know my last name or anything, but everybody's hearing Seth. So, because I was kind of like this, this infamous, myth, I don't know if you want to say legend or whatever, I was just a dude that supplied all the fucking drugs to all these colleges. So, a lot of people knew who I was.
I'm sure Colby will use legend in the clickbait title he'll come up with.
Yeah.
It'll be legend.
Yeah, a lot of people.
The infamous legend.
Yeah.
Seth.
But it's underground, underground legends. So,
yeah.
I'm not a mainstream celebrity or nothing. I've always been more notorious and infamous. So they start hearing my name, and then they got this guy, Dave Crago, so during their investigation, so he ends up actually setting up another friend of mine, this guy named Chris, that was actually getting shit right from me. He set him up in a deal with a DEA, like a narc. And then it was that was the state case. And then they pulled me into the state case, right? They tried to set up a deal, the cop got a certain amount, 10 sheets, but he wanted 20 more and he wouldn't give the money, until he got these other sheets. And the dude, Dave, whatever. He was an informant, but he was basically a pussy dude. And then the other dude, Chris, he was a lot of the dudes, they're just I was always a dude, if there was a problem, I was a dude that they would call.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because whatever, I not to say I'm not a tough guy, but I'll fight. I don't, whatever.
But these are all middle class, soft white kids.
Yeah.
Right?
So basically, it's not even my deal, but they call me to come handle it because the dude's Chris. He's like, man, I got this problem, whatever. So I fucking roll down there with a couple other dudes, and I don't even know. It's a fucking sting. It's a sting that they set for Chris Miller. They didn't even set the sting for me, but fucking Chris fucking calls me, and I get drawn into the fucking sting. So boom, and then they're like, oh, we got fucking Seth.
Right.
Who?
Yeah, they were trying to get to you.
But they had no idea. It was a fluke thing, and like I say, still, I didn't give anybody any drugs, and I didn't take any money.
That doesn't matter.
Yeah, because that's at the time though. I thought I was like, so look, so it's state. So I get arrested on state, And so they take me back to the station and fucking like the DE agents there, and they're like, oh, blah. I'm like, man, I don't got nothing to say to you, man. I'm like, man, fuck you. Talk to my lawyer. And they're like, well, your lawyer's gonna want to suck our dick. You don't know how much trouble you're in, blah, blah, blah. You know, we know everything's coming from you, blah, blah, blah. And then another fucked up thing happened because I had this one kid was holding like 120 sheets for me. And so they found out about him through Chris. And so then they go right and they get that, right? And then I'm like, oh, fuck. So then they got all my fucking product too. So now, because before they had like 10 sheets.
All right.
You know, it would have been a state. Then they go and seize, these guys give them the information. They go and get another 120 sheets. So now they got like 130 fucking sheets. So now they're fucking, it was like the biggest LSD bust in Fairfax County ever.
Right.
You know? So, yeah, and so then it's state, you know, whatever. I get my parents bail me out, and
the feds come in at that time.
yeah, the feds. So this is like early July, and you know,
yeah, people don't realize that. You know, like the state will grab you for something, and then sometimes they don't have enough to prosecute you, so they'll give it to the feds because the feds have even a lower bar as far as
conspiracy law,
right?
Yeah.
And then even then, you can sit there and think, oh, they don't have anything. They don't have me on tape. They don't have me on this. They don't have me on that. They don't have any product that I got. So they got nothing except
because that's what I was thinking.
Right, but what ends up happening in the feds is doesn't matter.
It's just what people say.
Right, they'll put 4 people on the stand that say they bought from you, and you're done. It's over.
Yeah.
You're like, they got no money. They got no tapes. They got nothing on me. They happen to have 4 guys that say I did it. Boom, you're looking at 30 years.
Yeah, because so I was thinking at that time because I was like, boom, I didn't sell any cop anything.
Right.
I didn't take any money from any cop. You know, I got hooked into the sting or whatever, and I got arrested, but I didn't sell anybody anything. And then even the other 120 sheets, it was mine, but it was at somebody else's house.
Right. You were watching too much Law and Order.
You know what I'm saying? So I was like, man, I'm good. So, you know, I hire a state lawyer, you know, whatever, I paid him like 10 grand cash, drug money. And the stupid lawyer even asked me, you know, his name was Michael Rieger. And he was like, I hope this is not drug money. I was like, what the fuck? I was like, dude, I'm fucking 20. I just gave you 10 grand cash, dude. Yeah. And you're like, I hope this isn't drug. And I was arrested for the biggest LSD bust in fucking Fairfax County.
No, that's my part-time. I've been saving that on my part-time job just to give to you.
Yeah. And I just came out, I'm like, boom, here, 10 grand, dude. Like I walked right into his office. It was in an envelope and he was like, I mean, it's just like so comical. These dudes like to save their ass, like the shit they'll say. I'm like, yeah, dude, where do you think it's from, man? You know, like I didn't even lie to the dude. I didn't even try to lie. I just looked at him like, come on, dude. Are you serious? So I got the state case. But like they're investigating the whole time. So like as soon as I get the state case, dude, it's like nobody wants to talk to me because the fucking DEA is going around talking to everybody. So it's like, until I got, you know, the federal case, it's about maybe like a month and a half, dude. And it was like crazy because like, I don't know who I can talk to. And like, also I had like a load of weed at this time. I'm trying to fucking move. I'm trying to get more money. Right. I didn't have that much, but I probably had about 40 pounds. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, fuck, dude. Cause like, it's like every other day, it's like, cause I could tell, like I'm calling people, some dudes owe me money and like dudes are just like dodging me. Like they don't want to talk to me. And cause you know, back then I knew anyhow, like when somebody gets busted, it's like they're hot.
Yeah.
So nobody wants to fuck with them. But see, so it was that, but at the same time, it was the investigation behind the scenes in the DEA. So I don't know who's giving information, who's not giving information. You know, they're like going to the chicks. They're going to like people's girlfriends. They're going to like my girlfriends. They're going to fucking everybody. The feds don't fuck around. And they're going to all these little fucking rich kids and they're threatening, like, give information on Seth or you're going to jail for 10 to life. So, you know, like I say, I for a long time, I had a big thing when I was first locked up where I was like, oh, fuck snitches, all this. But, you know, whatever. I mean, what did I expect them to do? It was my fault for putting those people in that position. You know, that's how I look at it now.
Right.
But,
that's actually how I look at it. Actually, when I hit the halfway house, I actually called like 5 of my co-defendants that all cooperated against me and apologized for putting them in a position where they had to. I said, because the truth is I was smarter than that and I knew better than to put you in that position. And, you know, the idea that they were going to hold up was insane.
That's comical. I mean, they got the fucking mafioso killers. They don't even fucking hold it.
Right.
That the whole thing, Like I'm not saying I know some super thorough dudes that I was in prison with, and I know some super thorough dudes that like were in Pelican Bay and walk like level 4 yards, and like still to this day they're like fucking
snitches and fuck them guys, and they would never.
But I always tell them, I'm like, dude, if you're in the life, or you're in prison, and you want to hold those values and that attitude, cool. But dude, if you're trying to live a normal life, and there's still some of my buddies that are like, I can walk in the U.S. I'm like, okay, dude, whatever. Is that going to help you out here?
I was going to say, don't commit crimes, and then you get to do 30 years.
Yeah.
Fuck
no,
that.
I see like my whole mindset. Life is about change. Life is about evolving. So I see, I put people in bad positions, and whatever they did, what they were going to do anyhow. So, but yeah. So I'm having like this month and a half thing where like then my lawyer, he's like, oh, it's going federal, so we got to hire a federal lawyer. So then I had to get like $5 more and pay this federal lawyer $5.
Only $5,000.
At first.
Okay.
So just that was like just the retainer. So paid him cash. He didn't even ask me if it was drug money. He just took it.
Right.
He just took it. He was like just happy, I guess, to get it. So yeah. So then this fucking shit goes federal, right? And I'm just like, fuck, man. So then I got to go through the whole fucking arrest process, get bailed out, all that fucking shit again. And still at this time, I'm not really sure like what I'm really looking at, because I'm not like up on the mandatory minimums. You know what I'm saying? I'm not up on the federal sentencing guidelines.
You don't have any idea? Like, are you thinking 3 years, 5 years? What do you hear? You're hearing
Yeah,
anything?
I'm thinking maybe 3 to 5 years. Even the fucking federal lawyer I hired, right? He's telling me, he's like, oh, you're a good kid from a good family. He's like still, he has that 80s mentality.
Right.
Like he's thinking like before they changed the laws in like 88 or whenever they went in effect, 88 or 89. So
89,
he's thinking,
89.
He's like, oh, maybe you might get like 8 to 10 years at the most. And so, but even I was like, man, fuck that. I was like, I'm not doing 8 to 10 years. And, so like I said, I basically, I had some product. I had money that I was trying to collect. I had the weed that I was selling, while all this shit is going on, even though I'm having to be careful who I'm selling it with, I'm trying to fuck with people that, the DEA doesn't know about or that they haven't talked to or whatever. Cause, I did fuck with a lot of different people. So, I'm getting my money up. And so then, basically I come up with this plan, like my escape plan. Cause I'm like, cause basically like my lawyers tell me, they're like, eventually, once they start talking to prosecutors, they're like, you're looking at 20 to life. I'm like, 20 to life? I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, are you serious? 20 to life? I was like flabbergasted. And then they were like, well, you might get like, you could probably get like whatever, like 4 to 6 years, if you, bring some of your contacts here. Like they
Right.
wanted me to bring some people from San Francisco, like some of my deadhead friends. They want me to bring in
They want you to
on like
cooperate.
big buys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they wanted me to set them up, and I was like, man, I don't know about that. So that was like how they presented my choices. They were like, oh, you can do 20 to life,
Yeah.
or you
this.
fucking can bust these motherfuckers, cooperate,
Yeah.
and get less time.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Or you can go to trial, lose, and definitely get life.
yeah, but I was even like, I was even fucked up. Like, you want me to cooperate and I'm still gonna get time?
Yeah.
I was like, what are you fucking like? I mean, I thought when people cooperate, like they get off, like they don't even go to prison. So they were like, no, it's not like that, whatever. So I formed this other plan, right? I was like, man, because I was out on bail. I was like, man, I'm gonna take the fuck off. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I'm gonna fucking get the fuck out of here. Fuck these motherfuckers, right? And like I say, I had some money. So, I was always a big sports fan.
Right.
And, back then it was all newspapers. So, like, we would get the Washington Post every day. So when you get the Washington Post, and you go, like, I would go right to the sports section. But the section right before the sports section is the Metro section. And so I remember, like, over the last couple of years of my teenage years, I would see like headlines like in the Metro section, like, so-and-so, this person like commits suicide at, Great Falls, jumping into the Potomac River. So that kind of always stuck in my mind for some reason. So I was thinking, I was like, man, I was like, how can I just like disappear, make Seth Ferranti disappear? So there's like no Seth Ferranti, there's like no case. So I came up with this, I devised this plan. I'm like, I'm going to fake my suicide on the banks of the Potomac at Great Falls National Park. I'm going to make it seem like I jump in the river, and the area where I was going to jump in, where everybody committed suicide, it's known as like Class 5 rapids, you know, because the water is like crazy and there's rocks. So, you know, they got like professional kayakers go there, but, you know, only like the super most craziest professional ones. So I was like, man, I'm going to stage my suicide, you know, in this area. I'm going to jump.
Everybody, that's everybody's go-to move.
Yeah. Okay. I'm like, I'm going to jump in the fucking water. So, I came up with all this fucking big plan. And then too, because I had another problem, you know, because, you know, my parents had put their house up for bail, right? So then I talked to the lawyers, right? So I told the lawyers, you know, because I was like, I didn't bring it up, but I was like, you know, I started pursuing the cooperation thing. I was like, well, what happens if I say I'm going to cooperate? They're like, well, you plead guilty, and then they're going to release you on a personal recognizance bond.
They released the lien against your parents' house, and it's no longer the collateral.
And I was like, once they said that, I already had this suicide plan, but you know, I didn't have enough money to cover, you know, because it was like, I think they put up $75,000 or something. So I didn't have enough money to cover that for my parents. So I didn't even want to fuck my parents, right? So then the lawyers, you know, when I asked them about the cooperation and they told me about this, I was like, they said PR. I was like, PR bond? I was like, what the fuck does that mean?
All right.
And they were like, well, you know, they're going to release you on your own recognizance. I'm like, all I got to do is like tell them I'm going to plead guilty and I'm going to cooperate.
All right.
And they were like, yeah. So I was like, okay. I was like, set it up. Right. So I fucking signed the paperwork. They fucking went to the courthouse, pled guilty. They fucking cut me loose. And then they told me like, I'm going to have to do these fucking debriefings.
Right.
Right. But I was already planned. I already had everything planned. Like I was fucking gone.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I went. And then like all this fucking transpired, like from the time I signed the paperwork till when I fled. I mean, it was only fucking like a couple days, right? And so I took the fuck off, right? I faked my suicide. I took off. You know, I got rid of the rest of the weed I had, and I took off to California. And like for real, dude, like I thought, I mean, because I was like on a 9-month high, like where I was on top of the world, and then like everything fucking crashed. So then I was like fucked up, and then like I came up with this plan and I executed it, and then I was like on top of the world. I was like, man, I'm that fucking dude. Like fuck these motherfuckers, right? Like, you know, I felt like I got my fucking swagger back or whatever, because like when I got busted and all that shit, like dude, my fucking moxie, my swag was just like gone. I was like at the lowest point.
But you'd also thought that you pulled off the faking the suicide, right? Because wasn't there something in the newspaper or something about you committing suicide? And
yeah,
like, so you thought it was a lock.
Yeah,
right?
So I go to LA, I fly to LA, and I'm staying on Point Magoo military base. So I know this girl, her dad's like the XO, this girl named Nancy. So she was like an old girlfriend. So I went out there, and I'm staying on the base, and you know, Point Magoo's a little bit up from LA, but I was having her drive me down to LA every day because, you know, back then they had like the big newsstands, you know, like on every corner with like all the newspapers from different places and all the magazines. You know, you don't see that as much today, sometimes in the big cities, but not really with all the newspapers from the different cities. So I was going to get the Washington Post. Like every couple of days I would go to the Washington Post. So the first time I went and I saw it said, you know, Fairfax LSD kingpin commits suicide. And I fucking saw, I was like, fuck yeah, I got these motherfuckers. Because I was thinking like, boom, now 7 years, like Seth Ferranti, my parents can have me declared legally dead in 7 years.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And no bodies found or whatever. They don't know what the fuck is up. And my body, you know, I figured my body was going to float out to the fucking Atlantic Ocean, you know? So I keep going back and I'm fucking like, I'm on top of the world again. I'm like, yeah, I'm the fucking smartest motherfucking outlaw. I can outsmart the fucking feds. These motherfuckers can't fuck with me. And I'm like 22, so I'm like fucking, you know when you're 20, it's all like that false bravado.
You think
know?
you're living in a movie or something.
Yeah, dude, like I was like, you know, Catch Me If You Can wasn't even out then, but you know, I thought I was Catch Me If You Can, you know. But you know, I just didn't know the name of the title of the movie. But I thought I was that dude. So I keep going down and I'm reading the papers because, you know, a couple of my co-defendants are going to trial. You know, everybody else pleads guilty. You know, out of everybody, like 2 dudes ended up going to trial. everybody else, like 6 other dudes, ended up pleading guilty. So I'm reading all this in the papers, and then it was like probably like 2 weeks after, I go back down, and like I'm still on my fucking high, dude, and I get the fucking paper and I open up to the Metro section, dude, and I was just fucking crushed because it said it was like fucking prosecutors declare Fairfax County LSD Kingpin suicide a hoax. And I saw the headline, I was like, what? Like all my planning, everything, dude. I was like, what the fuck?
I'm not dead.
So I start reading the article, right? And it's like they said the U.S. park rangers, you know, dragged the river for 2 weeks and they didn't find a body. And I was like reading it more, and then like it went on to say like, you know where, you know, I allegedly went in, you know, there's like a dam like after that. So I mean, I was like,
so
fuck,
it wouldn't have been washed out to sea. It would have been stuck in this one area, and they would have found the body.
Dude, I like seriously fucked up,
Yeah.
man. I fucking staged.
You had a
I
good 2 weeks,
staged my
though.
suicide.
It was a good 2 weeks.
Yeah, so I staged the suicide on the wrong side of the dam. So that's, I mean,
I had a dime.
so look, I thought it was smart as fuck. And I mean, really, in a way you think, I mean, I did. I was real innovative, and I came up with this fucking crazy idea, and I almost pulled it off. Just that one little fucking detail, man.
Next time, you know.
So that's how, so that's how that whole shit transpired. So then they made me, for some ungodly reason, these fucking, and I know why now. I learned later. At the time, I had no fucking clue. So I learned later because when I was in prison, I did all these Freedom of Information Acts, you know, on all my case and everything. Yeah. You know, because I was a megalomaniac researcher like that. So you might know about stuff like that.
Me too.
So what I pieced together after the fact, so what happened was there was this dude named Henry Hudson. He was like the assistant prosecutor, like the, you know, the assistant he was assistant U.S. attorney. Yeah. Named Henry Hudson, like on my case at the time in the Eastern District of Virginia. So all of a sudden, right after my case, this dude transfers to the Eastern District U.S. Marshal's office, and he's the head of the U.S. Marshal's office. And so I guess like, you know, he felt like I put a black mark on his record, or, you know, like I made them look bad, or I outsmarted them.
Was he was your AUSA? He was your...
He wasn't the prosecutor on my case. My prosecutor on my case was this chick named Christine Wright. He was like the assistant U.S. attorney.
Oh,
so
okay.
he was like the second highest dude in the office.
Never mind.
Yeah, so
she was underneath him, and your case was underneath his caseload. So,
so this dude, he goes from second in charge of the U.S. Attorney's Office to number one guy in the U.S. Marshals in the Eastern District of Virginia, and this dude makes me a top 15 U.S. Marshals list. I guess out of revenge factor, or he's pissed off, or I'm the black mark on his record, and he has higher aspirations.
Right.
You know, so. So I mean, I had no clue. So for 2 years, like I'm prancing around the fucking U.S. Like eventually, I started selling weed and not LSD, but I started running weed from Dallas, Texas, up to St. Louis, and I'm just like carrying on, you know, war on drugs. I'm still a drug dealer. Like, you know, really in retrospect, when I look at it, I was really, really, really stupid. I mean, I'm trying to fucking be the biggest drug dealer I can as a fugitive at the height of the war on drugs. So, you know, but I mean, retrospect, age, you get some clarity. So, you know, at the time, you know, I got blinders on, whatever. I thought I was a cool guy. So, so this dude, so I'm actually U.S. Marshals fucking top 15 most wanted for fucking the whole 2 years I'm a fugitive. And like, I have no fucking clue. Because even when I was a fugitive, like I would watch all the shows. I watched like America's Most Wanted. Like I'm doing research, dude. I'm like a researcher. That's what I do. You know, like when I do something, like I research it, right? So I'm watching America's Most Wanted. I'm watching fucking like Unsolved Mysteries. I'm watching all that shit because I'm figuring out like, how do they catch these motherfuckers? And so a lot of times, like I'm seeing shit like the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez. It's taken like 3 months to match up his prints. Yeah. So, you know, I'm like, fuck, dude, like I'm low profile. I don't have any murders. I never even beat nobody up. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, it's going to take them forever to match up my prints because I'm, you know, I feel like I'm not a high priority. But, you know, lo and behold, I had no fucking idea that I'm fucking a federal U.S. Marshals top 15 most wanted fucking fugitive. So, and like I say, this dude, Henry Hudson, he he did the paperwork, because later on when I got caught, one of the U.S. Marshals told me, like, he's looking at my jacket, and he's looking at me, and I look like, when I got caught, I looked like a little college kid, and he's like, who did you piss off?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because there's like anybody else on the top 15 most wanted list is like violent, has guns, murders, whatever.
Yeah, they're dangerous fugitives, and you're selling a product you can't even OD on.
I'm selling fucking hippie drugs.
Right.
So whatever. So, but I came to find out this all later. So, but that whole time really when I'm a fugitive, I was selling weed. I was running weed. Eventually, like in LA, my money ran out, and that girl got sick of me living in her parents' house. So, I had to fucking roll out. So, she didn't want to. Her parents didn't know I was a fugitive, but she knew. So after about 6 months, she was kind of like, dude, you gotta like.
The novelty's worn off.
Yeah. She was like, yeah, it was cool seeing you again and having some sex and shit, but now you got to bounce, motherfucker, because this relationship's not lasting. There's no future. You're a fucking fugitive fucking drug dealer. You know what I'm saying? At the height of the war on drugs, she's like, she saw no future. Like, but you're going to have my kids when I go to prison? I don't know. But she told me to kick rocks. I go to Dallas, Texas. I hook up with Mexican Eddie.
Right.
My fucking brick pot dealer.
You got fake IDs. And
I
stuff
got tons of fake IDs.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a whole nother story. That'll take another half hour to tell about the fake IDs. But I got a whole fucking bunch of fake IDs that I got through researching through books. I learned how to do it. And I meet some guys, and they're from St. Louis, and I'm selling drugs, weed in Texas at Harrigan's restaurants, these other restaurants. And one of the guys one time, he goes to St. Louis, so I'm like, can you sell some weed? And so I go up, I take 20 pounds, and like over that next year to 18 months, I have my second little fucking marijuana empire. And then eventually I get arrested for like a quarter pound of weed with the same guy who took me up there, but it was in his truck, so he claims it. He actually was selling weed for me, but it was my weed.
You guys got pulled over or something? What?
No, we were in the back of a Burger King parking lot.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, the Burger King parking lot had just got robbed like 2 weeks before. I just dropped off like 3 pounds. We were just waiting for the money and smoking a joint.
Cops pull up.
Dumb luck. And I didn't even know he had the quarter pound in the truck. But, he did the right thing. He claimed it. He said it was his. But they still arrested me and took me in and matched my prints, released me. Then I came back and bailed him out, got his car out of the impound, and got my money for the 3 pounds. And but then in 3 days they match up my fucking prints. So then the fucking Midwest fucking fugitive task force is looking for me. They go to his house first because they got his real name. He starts driving them around St. Louis to all the people I fucking sell weed to. And then eventually they found some dude that I just fucking loaded up, threatened to give him 10 years to life, and he brought him right to my hotel. Boom. Extradited back to Virginia. Sentenced to 25 years. 304 months.
You just pled guilty to 25 years?
I had already pled. I pled before I left.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I pled because I pled to the 20 to life and told him I would cooperate.
Because you were never going to be there for the sentencing.
Because I was going to be dead.
Right. Okay.
But I wasn't dead. My whole plan backfired. So then when I came, they held me to that plea, and obviously they didn't give me any credit for any cooperation. And they enhanced me 5 years for 60 months for taking off of, obstruction of justice and failure to appear.
Right. So 25 years.
Yeah.
Did you do a 2255? Did you do anything?
I did everything, man.
Oh, okay. You went through the whole process of trying to.
Lost everything.
Yeah.
Back then in the 90s, you couldn't get any play for anything. Only if you went to trial, you could have went to play. So I would say that to any of your listeners. Really? You got 2 choices when you get busted, man. Either fucking cooperate fucking fully and fucking get as little time as you can. If you're not going to do that, go to trial, man. That's the only way you're going to retain your rights. So, like I'm saying, don't try to do anything halfway. Don't try to outsmart the motherfuckers like I did. You're just going to get fucked.
Yeah. 25 years, bro. What the fuck? And then I heard on the other podcast where you were talking about being the different prisons and the whole thing, and you mentioned Coleman and Whitey Bulger. Yeah. Like I was in the medium there.
Yeah.
At Coleman.
I used to write Whitey Bulger.
Yeah. You told me that.
Dude, he has the most awful handwriting.
Yeah.
Fucking, you can barely read his writing, dude. It's like
he was also like 100. He was like 70
you gotta have
something.
like a fucking magnifying glass, dude. I'd sent him the Rolling Stone article about my case. It came out in '97 when I was in FCI Beckley, and he wrote me a whole fucking letter on the my Rolling Stone article. Like I still got that. I don't know. I think I might put it up on eBay one day.
I was gonna say any letters from him would be worth something.
Let's see if somebody give me I'll start the bidding at 10,000.
All right, so we're going to do another podcast about what you're doing now, because when you went to prison, you started writing, and that's although the true crime story is cool, to me, I mean that's like you're at a spot now in your career where I'd love to be in a few years from now,
Yeah. No, the whole prison. I mean, it was a lot of time I had to do, but whatever. I got 3 college degrees. I got a master's degree. I started writing books, and every day in prison, my thing was, what can I do today for when I get out? So, I mean, everything I've done, it was all planned, dude. I mean, I'm very methodical.
Yeah.
You know how I do stuff. I do everything one step at a time. I research. I'm not trying to jump from 1 to 10. I don't mind taking the steps. I'm very methodical. So prison, even though I had to do 21 years, I was very methodical in that 21 years. And I did everything that I needed to do to put me in the position where I am now.
I started writing true crime stories when I was in prison. I didn't write any fiction stories. Like I've heard your how you started writing. It's like some of the gangster guys' stories and some were what, fiction, kind of fiction. Started that way?
No, everything was pretty much nonfiction. My first book,
Okay.
Prison Stories, was true, but I wrote it as fiction because I didn't want to be like a snitch in prison.
Right, and they're always so worried about, what if I tell you something that I could get? Well, then let's not talk about that, or we'll change the names. But so yeah, I started doing that. It was the same thing. Like I heard your interview before, so it's basically like, look, I'm in prison, and when I was in prison, I saw all the other guys. They're learning to play an instrument. They're taking horticulture classes, or they're playing softball. And it's like you're spending 10 years of your life or 15 years, and you're an amazing, handball player. But you came in with no education. You've only sold drugs. You're an amazing handball player when you get out, but you're in your 50s now. The fuck are you gonna do when you get out of prison? And the guys that were taking horticulture are only concerned about taking it because they plan on burning a bunch of houses and growing marijuana. And the guys that are taking the stuff as far as like, I forget what they called that class, where it was basically about how to run a restaurant. So highest failure rate out there, get a restaurant. So what you want to do is you want to put a guy who has no money in a situation where he can open a restaurant and fail.
Or real estate.
Or something. It's like you don't have any experience, you have no way to do this. So my point is, to me, I thought, what can I do in here? And the one, you can't really work, but the one thing they will let you do is they will let you write. They will let you publish books. They will let you write stories. You can write for magazines, and you can make money that way. You can't run a business, but they can't stop you from doing. That's the one thing they will let you do. And there were so many amazing stories. I would hear guys tell stories. I heard for years, I'd listen to stories, and I'd think, how is that not a movie? How has no one written your story? And they can't write their own stories because you don't see yourself the way you really are.
No.
So that's when I came in. I wrote my own story, and then I started writing other guys' stories. And, I figured someday I'll get out of prison. I'll have all these stories, and I'll try and get them turned into documentaries or movies. IP. I started collecting IP. And so, but you're way ahead of where I am. I just like to be where you're at some point in the future. That's my goal. That's my dream. That's what I laid in bed at night in my bunk and thought, well, if I get out, I could do this, and I could do this, and I do this. And I had a whole building block in my head, planned.
That's how you do it. You got to manifest it. You got to talk about it. You got to put it out there. You got to make it reality. I'm a firm believer in, like moving forward, positivity, and just saying what I'm going to do and then doing it.
Right.
I'm a firm believer in that. Like, I don't, like even in prison is a very negative place, right? And when I first started writing, even the guards, the other prisoners, they'd be like, you can't do that. They'd always told me like, I can't do this. And like, I would read the policy and I'd be like, man, I can do this.
Yeah.
So even out here, I'm like, I cannot stand negativity. Anybody that is like negative or like second guesses me what I'm trying to do. And like I say, sometimes like, you know, I'm doing these documentaries now, you know, I got White Boy on Netflix, and, you know, some people that might be like the pinnacle, but to me, it's just like another ladder on the rung. You know, I want to be the next Quentin Tarantino. I want to do, you know, scripted, you know, fictional, like drug, you know, crime movies, you know, sometimes maybe based on a real event, but you know, like, dude, like I want to do like $100 million budget movies.
Right.
You know, like I'm not fucking around. Like I'm already looking right now from do this documentary stuff. I'm looking to jump to like the $3 to $5 million indie flick. And then, you know, then I'm looking to jump to like a 20 million, you know, 50, 60. And then, you know, I want to do like a fucking Marvel movie.
Right.
I want to do the Purple Man. I don't know if you know who the Purple Man is.
Who's that?
He's this criminal character. He's like in a lot of Spider-Man comic books, but he's like, he wears like a gangster suit and he's all purple. And he has like these, I don't even know how to say it. It's like, is it called fur gnomes or something? So it's like he can emit from his body
Pheromones.
Pheromones. So
Yeah.
he can emit those from his body and make you do what he says. So that's like his superpower. But he's like a villain.
I had an ex-girlfriend like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of women are like that. Especially on men. But he's like a super villain. So I want to do like the Purple Man movie. You know, I also want to do I want to remake The Princess Bride.
Right. Oh, nice.
You know what I'm
I love it. You guys don't even know what The Princess Bride
I want to
is.
remake The Princess Bride.
So sad, bro.
With good CGI.
Nice.
You know, like a Tolkienistic version of The Princess Bride, but keep the humor and the sweetness. And then another movie I want to remake. I want to remake you know, Harder They Come, you know, the classic, or Harder They Fall, the classic Jamaican movie.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like from 1971. You know, it's about, you know, Jimmy Cliff's in it. So he's about like a up and coming reggae, you know, dance hall guy, but like he's involved in crime. So I want to remake that, just like, think how they remade Scarface, right? So I want to remake, you know, that old Jamaican movie, except, you know, set it in like, you know, the hip hop era. You know, and have a guy who's like, he's trying to be a rapper, but he's involved in crime and he ends up, you know, going to jail for being a crime. Like a lot of the stories we, you know, heard about in federal prison. But yeah, my whole thing, man, why I started writing, because I kind of looked at it. I started taking college classes and I was like,
When you were in prison.
Yeah, when I was in prison.
Which is difficult, by the way. Like everybody thinks that, oh yeah, they offer this. Listen, man, you're doing everything yourself. They might have some person who's supposed to help you, but they're half-assed about it. So it's basically all on you.
And plus, when I first went in, they had the Pell Grants, right? But about 96, they abolished the Pell Grants, so they didn't even fund the college courses. So my parents paid for all my college courses. I did all my shit correspondence. So I got the AA degree from Penn State. I got the BA from University of Iowa. And actually, that was one of my best moves when I got in that program, because University of Iowa is like famous for a writing program. You know, the writing program, you got to go there. You know, it's like on campus. But a lot of the instructors that I was doing correspondence courses through were the instructors from that famous writing course, you know, doing like extra work for extra money.
Right.
And so I had the benefit of these instructors, and I was taking all writing heavy, because in there you can go like a business administrative route, or you can go like a humanities route. You know, and if you go like a humanities liberal arts, it's like a lot of writing, creative writing, journalism, you know, reading a lot of books and writing papers. And eventually I got my master's degree. I got my master's degree from University of California. So, but during that whole time, that's how I learned to write. You know, so it's not like I just started putting pen to paper or whatever. I like took college courses, you know, and I learned to write. I already was creative. You know, I was kind of creative, you know, my whole life. You know, I used to write poetry, play in bands, all that shit like that. You know, I was like dungeon master.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Creating all these worlds and shit.
It's so funny, like they don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know what that means.
Yeah,
what a
so,
dungeon master is. Dungeons and Dragons. That was like the. Oh, wow. Listen, there's so many things. There's so many things that I'll say to somebody
80s.
my age, and I'll always look over at Colby, and Colby's just like, he has no clue what I'm talking about.
That's the 80s shit. The
good stuff.
80s was a wonderful time. But pre-internet I think it was a better world, really. But, you know, so the whole time I'm getting these degrees, I'm writing. So First, I started writing. My first big success was actually writing prison basketball. So because like in there, dude, there's like these dudes. They're like phenomenal basketball players, dude. And like how you were talking about, like they spend all this time. They spend like 10, 15 years just playing basketball. But I mean, they can never be professional because when they get out, they're going to be too old. But like in there, dude, like these dudes are phenomenal basketball players. So I started writing about this one guy named Ron Jordan. He was from Harlem. He had like that Rucker Park game, dude. And this dude was built like a linebacker, right? He was maybe like 6'1", like 240, right? But this dude could like slam dunk. He had like all the handles. He like embarrassed dudes. They called him Ron Jordan the abuser because he used to like abuse people. He would like do all this stuff, like fake somebody out, act like he's going to the basket and with an easy layup, but he would pull it back to let the dude guard him again. Because it was just like the man-on-man, like macho shit, dude. This dude, and he could dunk and he could shoot threes. This dude was scoring like 60 points a game. And everybody used to come out to the gym to see him. So that was like my first big success. I started writing about this dude and the other prison basketball players. And I was writing for this website called Hoops Hype, which now they're like on, I don't know, they're like, I think USA Today or something bought them. So they're like this big, but at that time they were just like this little kind of hip hop, hip hop basketball website. And then I started writing for Slam, which is kind of like a hip hop basketball magazine. And then from there, I started doing the more gangster stories. I started writing for Don Diva and Feds, which are like, they call like, the street Bibles.
Yeah, they wouldn't even let those into the
like those are
prison.
like the most popular magazines in prison, man. Like
guys would get them sent in. They'd have they started
alternate
putting
covers,
new
fake covers,
fake covers to get
like
them
you
in.
get one of those magazines in prison, like dude, the line is like 200 long. Everybody wants to read it, So I started writing for them, Don Diva, Feds, and really I formed a journalism career in prison because that was like the only thing I could do. I was like, what the fuck can I do? I was like, I can write, So and then really my biggest break came. This is probably like early 2000s. I just started writing really like around 99. So, at first I was just writing like in the prison, like I was doing prison sports newsletters, like that they post on the boards and stuff. I was doing that. I did that for 6 years while I was taking the college classes. So then I started doing the Don Diva stuff and the prison basketball. And then there was this editor at Vice named Jesse Pearson. So this was like when Vice was just basically a magazine. They had a website, but they weren't huge like they are today. So this is like early 2000s. So they're like this kind of low rent GQ. They have this big thing. It's like do's and don'ts where they do like the fashion, like dress like this, and they make fun of people. They take pictures. So he was a big fan of my work from Don Diva. So he reached out to me, and I started writing, dude, and they were paying me like $500 a month.
Right.
To write a column. I wrote a column, like 1,200 words called I'm Busted. And it was in every magazine for like fucking 2 or 3 years. $500. Like I was living like a king on $500 a month.
$500 in prison's a lot of fucking money.
Fuck, dude. I was like, everybody thought I was like a millionaire.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so that was like my first big break because I started writing for that. And then I kept writing for Vice as they kept growing. And I was like their prison guy. I would do like their prison. And then I got more into true crime. Then I started doing stuff for Penthouse. I started doing stuff for The Fix, war on drug stuff. And how the whole white boy thing came about is, I started writing him around 2005 because I started doing my street legends stuff. Like I had all this material from Don Diva, and Don Diva it's a magazine, so they could only fit like so much. And I had all this extra material, and all the dudes, they kept coming back to me. They're like, dude, what about this picture? Or what about this? You want to use some of the stuff? So eventually, like they were upset with me because everything was not in the magazine that they gave me. So eventually I came up with my Street Legends series. I've published Prison Stories 2005, Street Legends 2008. So at the same time, I reach out to White Boy Rick because I'm in FCI Gilmer and FCI Beckley and FCI Gilmer in West Virginia. And there's all these Detroit dudes. So I'm hearing about this dude, White Boy Rick.
Hold on. You know who White Boy Rick is? Okay. You guys saw the movie. Yeah.
I haven't seen it, but I've seen the trailers and stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so I start writing him because I want to put him in like my Street Legends book.
Yeah.
Right? And basically my Street Legends books are just like all these African-American drug lords that are part of, the lyrical lore of hip hop.
Right.
And gangster rap. I just kind of romanticize and glorify it, and I make them into these Billy the Kid, Jesse James type figures. Because I was writing for my peers in prison, and also I was a white guy writing about African American dudes like in prison, like. You know, that doesn't happen. I mean, you've been in prison. Yeah. That's not like something normal, you know? And the only reason I even had the juice to do that is because, you know, I had the long sentence. I'd been in a little bit. And, you know, the longer you're in, the more stripes you get. You know? So by the time I do this, you know, I'm like in 10 years. So, you know, I got a lot of stripes. And I played sports. I was a sports fanatic. I'm like really athletic. I would be like the only white dude like out there playing ball with all the black dudes. Like I was like the dude. Like, you know, you go to the yard, like you go to the yard at lunch, I'm playing ball. You go to the yard at recall, I'm playing ball. Yeah. You know, I played like 3 hours straight. I didn't give a fuck. That was like how I did my time.
Yeah, I actually sat at a table in the library with 5 guys that were writing, 5 black guys that were all writing urban novels. I was the only one writing true crime. But I was the white guy at the room or at the table because I was the guy that, you know, as racist as this is going to sound, it was basically, you don't have Google. What you've got is a white guy. So they'd say, you know, I don't understand. How do you say that? Hey, Cox. It was always, hey, Cox. Hey, Cox. And I'd be like, no, it's this, it's that. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, this. Yeah, so, I mean, I was, you know, to sit at that table, everybody thought I was like a, you know, like, you must be a cool guy to be sitting at the table with all those guys because the white guys and black guys very seldomly mix in prison.
You were just Google.
Yeah, I was Google. Yeah, I had a purpose.
You were like that smart guy from the 80s that Google fucking made obsolete.
Yeah, exactly. In prison, only in prison. You know?
Yeah, but in prison, like, they still need that guy who knows everything.
Out here, I'm semi-smart, but in prison, fucking super genius in prison because the IQ's so low. But anyway.
No, that's what I tell people too, right? Because look, like since I've been out, like, dude, I've been to Cannes, man. I go to Sundance, and I'm around like, dude, these people, they went to Harvard and Columbia, and dude, they just speak, and I'm like, I just want to be around them. So I can learn to speak better because they're like so eloquent and they use all these fucking big words. And like I feel like a brute around them, right? Yeah. But like in prison, I'm like you said, I'm like the super genius in fucking prison. And then I get out around all these fucking talented writers and filmmakers and people that went to all these Ivy League schools and come from all this money. And I feel like a fucking brute, dude. Yeah. I'm telling you, it's fucking crazy. This is like my biggest fucking dilemma today, you know, because a lot of people that are like, oh no, you're eloquent, you can talk. And I'm like, no, I don't talk like that. I talk like a brute. Right. I talk like an educated brute.
Yeah, that's how I kind of talk about. Among my friends on the outside, I'm practically a thug around these guys. And to me, it's like, as far as like masculinity, like I always say, like I'm like a 4 or 5 on the masculinity scale from 1 to 1. Oh
yeah, 10. There's some tough dudes in prison. But they got tough motherfuckers.
Oh, in prison, I'm like a 1, maybe a 0. I might as well be wearing a dress when I'm in prison. Out here, I'm a 5. Prison, I'm a 0 practically. I'm this far from being a fucking punk in prison. I mean, that's how they look at you. You're a soft white guy. You're harmless. Yeah. But yeah, it's funny how just everything changes out here.
Yeah. So you know. So white boy Rick, I started writing him, right? And like, I want to tell his story, right? But I want to like romanticize it. I want to make it gangster. You know, I want to glorify it because that's what I'm doing in my Street Legends series. And I'm hearing all this stuff about him. Like, who is this white kid that was running all these, you know, black organized crime in Detroit when he was like 16 or 17? And I kind of identify with him too, you know, because we were both young white dudes. We both got a lot of time. You know, we were both involved in stuff as a teenager. So, you know, there's a lot of similarities, you know, so I'm writing him and we start writing. And he starts telling me like this totally opposite story. You know, how like he was in a foreman and, you know, the police prostituted him and buried him. And I didn't really get it at first because I'm like, man, I'm not writing about informants. Like my base is like the other prisoners, you know, and I'm in like medium security prisons. I'm like, these dudes ain't gonna fucking, if I write some shit, they're gonna be like, you're writing about a snitch, you know, or whatever. So it took me a couple years to kind of get my head around his story and how to write it. And like I say, it took me to get older and it took my writing to evolve. And it probably took me going to a low.
Yeah.
Where, you know, they don't carry it like the same, you know, because I did 12 years in the mediums and then I did 9 years in the lows. So it was like this kind of evolution in my writing where, you know, I went from writing this hardcore death before dishonor shit to, you know, more about the injustices of the drug war. Because I started seeing the bigger picture more, you know, as I got older and I started writing more. And like I say, also going to the low gave me more room to explore this stuff with not being considered this or be considered that. So, yeah, 2012, I wrote this story about his case for the Fix, dude, and like the shit fucking went viral, dude. Like it was my first experience of having the prison basketball shit was pretty popular, but like this shit like fucking went super fucking viral on the Fix. It's this like drug war fucking site,
right?
And just brought a ton of attention to me, you know. And the whole time I was already thinking, you know, because I was writing books, you know, from 2005 till I got in 2015, I wrote 8 books. And then when I got out, I took 2 of those books and I divided it up, the chapters, you know, and put 12 out, like digital books, you know, to make it like 20, even though it's like from the same material. And then I had a couple more. So I think I got like 24 books out right now. But once I started doing the books, you know, and I was kind of doing the journalism, and I was like, man, really, I want to do movies. I want to do visual stuff, you know. But it was just kind of, you know, learning it. And like when I took my master's degree, I took like a lot of film type courses, you know, at least reading the books as much as I could in there. And I did have a couple, like they would let me send in some DVDs, you know, so I could watch different shit. But really, like everything I was doing, man, was basically for gearing up, you know. So, you know, I even like, dude, I read a whole bunch of books, like books on like shots, like it explains all the different shots, like in narratives and stuff like that. And yeah, I just went crazy. So I was like, you know, reading, because in there, that's all you got time to do is read, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, you might as well educate yourself. I don't think I read 5 books since I've been out in 6 years, but you know, yeah, so I kind of hit the ground running, and you know, I did more pieces on White Boy Rick's story for like Vice News and Vice and some other places. So, but still, when I first got out though, I was just a journalist. I was working as a journalist. And then I met the dude, Sean Reck, the director of White Boy, and he had Transition Studios. He had just done this movie, A Murder in the Park, that was on Showtime. And I actually interviewed him for Vice.
Right.
And he found out about my backstory, and we started talking. And at first we were going to do like this prison expose, like on how all these sub industries are built around the prisons.
Right.
You know, like Keefy Coffee and all the hotels, and how it's all kind of interconnected. You know, with the dude, like the senator brings the prisons there, and it's all his friends, the businessmen who form all the businesses around the prison. So we were looking at something like that. And then we were talking, and I showed him some, it was like right when they announced like the White Boy Rick movie with Matthew McConaughey, and I had shown him some of my articles. I go, did you hear about this? And he's like, yeah, I heard they're going to do that movie. And I'm like, you know, I know this dude. And I'm like, check out, here's these articles. You know, I wrote like 4 or 5 articles about, and he's like, what? He's like, he's from Cleveland. So he's like, yeah, I heard about this dude. You know, he's like our age. So he's like, I heard about this dude, man. And then he was like, man, he was like, you got access to him? And I was like, yeah. He's like, I'm looking to do my next doc, man. Let's do this. You know, so it was just like lucky I made the right relationship at the right time when he was looking for something, you know, and there was a hype because of the White Boy Rick movie. So it made him interested. And for that, he had actually, you know, told me, like, he came with a couple different proposals, like, you know, let's do it like this, let's do it like this, you know, trying to lessen, you know, maybe kind of my role, or just kind of, you know, buy the idea or whatever. And, I told him, you know, I knew how to tell a story, but I didn't really know how to make a film. So I told him, I said, look, man, I said, you know, I want to be by your side. You know, I want you, you know, whatever, if you can give me something at the end, whatever, but you don't got to pay me nothing now. I say, I want to, you know, I want you to mentor me. Also, I asked him that because this dude had cut his teeth doing like Crime Stoppers. He did like 200 Crime Stopper shows, you know, for all the networks. Yeah. And he had won like 9 regional Emmys in Ohio for all his work on these 200 shows. So I knew dude was something special. I knew he knew what he was doing, because when I walked in his office, he had 9 fucking Emmys. Yeah. So, yeah, man. So I made the deal with him. I said, look, dude, I'm going to get you everything you need for this film. I'm going to get you all the access. I'm going to get you all the people you need to make this film. And I go, I just want you to, you know, involve me in the process, man. And he was very fucking cool about it. So like a lot of times we would do the interviews, and I would be there. Sometimes I might watch the camera, sometimes not. But always at the end of the interview, when he was done, he would give me 5 minutes in the director's chair. So, you know, actually White Boy, so I got a writer credit and a producer credit on that. And Sean Reck, an Emmy-winning director, trained me how to be a director, you know, mentored me over that, like, you know, 9 to 12 months that we did the shooting, you know. And then I worked with his editor, you know, and him as we edited it, you know, over like the next 9 to 12 months. So that was like, you know, so really I mean, Sean Reck, I mean, he taught me a lot. And then also like Rick, man. Rick's still my real good friend to this day. You know, Rick, there was a lot of interest in Rick. He had the Hollywood movie, man. Rick didn't have to, you know, give us our blessing or participate in that White Boy documentary. He did that because of our relationship. Because I told him, because I said, look, dude, I want to make films. I said, this dude got the money to make this film. And I go, first off, you know, our first goal was to get him out.
Yeah.
You know, and he had got this other guy out from A Murder in the Park, right? So that was kind of like his track record. But that was like the first thing. But I told Rick, I said, the second thing is, I want to make films, motherfucker. I said, do this for me. Because, you know, he was kind of first. He was like, oh, who's this guy? And his representation were, oh, we don't know about this guy. He only made this one film. Who the fuck is he? But I said, look, I believe in this dude. I've seen his, you know, team. He can do it, you know. And I go, this is my entrance into the film world and what I want to do. And so like I will always be indebted, you know, to Rick, especially, you know, for giving me that opportunity by giving his blessing to that, but also, you know, to Sean Reck for teaching me everything that he taught me.
And it's on Netflix right now. Is it playing on Netflix?
Yeah, it's on Netflix.
So it was on, what was it on before Discovery and then
no,
Netflix?
No, it was on Stars. It was on
Stars
Stars for 18 months.
And now Netflix.
Yeah, then it went on Netflix. And it was crazy because when it first came out probably like, you know, almost 3 years ago. And when it first came out, I knew it was a good film, right? But this is like pre-pandemic. This is like pre-Black Lives Matters exploding all over the world internationally. You know, this is pre a lot of things. And I think when it first, I thought like everything that's happening now was going to happen when it first came out, man. Because I was like, man, this film is awesome, man. Sean Reck and his team, you know, I contributed to it, but, you know, I'll give credit where credit is due. I mean, that was Sean Reck and his editor, you know. I was probably like the third most important person on that, or maybe the fourth. But, you know, I knew it was a good film. I knew it was powerful, and it did. It helped to get Rick out, you know, not that it got Rick out by itself, but it helped. But I thought everything that's happening now was going to happen then. But I think because the way the world was, you know, people, you know, they didn't believe it, or, you know, there was too many rabbit holes, or they didn't believe in the level of corruption that we were showing and exposing, you know. And plus, I think everybody was still kind of in the rat race of America, you know, capitalism, trying to make money. So, you know, so it had like a, you know, 18-month run on Stars, and, you know, it didn't really get a lot of recognition or turn a lot of heads. And then, you know, like we signed the Netflix deal, and it went on Netflix like right at the end of the pandemic, you know, like last April. And I think it might have something to do with like the Tiger King effect maybe, but it went on Netflix, dude, and it just fucking exploded. It was like it was brand fucking new, man.
Right.
So the first 2 weeks it was on Netflix. It's like top 10 on Netflix, not top 10 documentaries, like top 10 movies, series,
overall,
everything for 2 weeks straight, right? New York Times did like a little fucking write-up on it. And then, you know, like I say, then like they said like in April or May, like it had 20 million fucking views.
Right.
So it's crazy because that just, for me, it put a lot of wind in my sails because I had a bunch of different stuff I wanted to do that I'm working on now, but I didn't really have the money.
Right.
But it just kind of blew me up. And I always look at it like sports. Like, all right, New England Patriots won the Super Bowl. Everybody knows Tom Brady's the man, but all those other free agents on that team are getting big contracts.
Yeah.
So like I was part of something that has been extremely successful, you know, on Netflix, and that a ton, and it's like recognition, the recognition value, dude. Like you could talk to anybody, you know, most people, they know fucking White Boy Rick and they know fucking White Boy on Netflix.
Right.
You know, it gives that recognition, like that name value where I could just meet somebody on the plane and be like, oh yeah, I did White Boy on Netflix. And they'll be like, you know, they know it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so now, dude, I got a ton of shit, man. I'm doing a cannabis documentary, cannabis docuseries on Humboldt County called Tangled Roots that I just premiered the teaser at the Emerald Cup, which is like the World Series of Cannabis, just last weekend. You know, I got on stage and got to talk about it. I had all the farmers with me. I'm doing an LSD docuseries that I'm gonna premiere the first episode of it in San Francisco on Bicycle Day. You know, that's like when Albert Hoffman first synthesized LSD and took it and discovered LSD. They call it Bicycle Day on April 19th.
All right.
So I'm doing it at this thing in San Francisco. And then I also got this other docuseries I'm working on about the mafia and heroin called Dope Man. And so I'm making arrangements, you know. I've kind of come up with this plan because all this stuff I do, it's kind of niche, it's kind of true crime. It's really hard to get into film festivals. I've been going to all the big film festivals. I've been to Cannes, I've been to Sundance. I've been talking to all these people, and I'm kind of seeing like these target market audiences, like the Emerald Cup or like a LSD specific event or like a Mafia specific event.
Right.
These are almost like I think I can use these like my Sundance. Because I mean, maybe I could get a Sundance, maybe not, but Sundance is only once a year, and all my stuff's gonna be finished up, like in the next 6 to 8 months. So I'm looking for ways, like how can I create the hype, and the press, and make enough noise, to make the streamers notice. Yeah, I got White Boy on Netflix, but it's not like I got a direct hook up to Netflix,
Right.
So you still got to make the noise. That's why they have the film festivals, because they write about these things, and that brings the attention of the Amazons, the Hulus, the Netflix. And really, in today's game, it's not about going to the theater. It's not about going to DVD. It's about getting on these streamers, man. That's how you're going to make your money back, and that's how you're going to keep working. And really.
Right.
Really, like anything in life with film, it's it's about you got to keep working, man.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you got to get this stuff, because I mean that shit's expensive. We spent, like, White Boy costs like $250,000 to make, and like some of these docu-series that I'm doing now, that are like 180, 225 minutes. I mean, these are like, we're spending like $500,000, $750,000 to complete these projects.